And the polls in Arkansas are, by our calculations, are closed, which means we have added drama as we welcome you to Election Central. I'm Craig O'Neill, joined by Arkansas Business's Lance Turner.
And we have team coverage both here in the studio and across Central Arkansas as we see these polls closing and results starting to come in just any moment now.
That's right. So Marlisa Goldsmith and Dawn Scon will be answering any questions that pop up as this night goes on. They're also going to be talking to experts as results roll in, which they should start doing soon. And they'll be checking in with our crews in the field. That means we start with you, Marlisa.
Thanks so much, Craig. Our crews are following the most talked about races here in Arkansas, including one that is gaining national attention tonight. We first want to check in with our own Ashley Godwin, who has more on today's voter turnout just minutes before polls close. How are they looking, Ashley?
Marlisa, it's looking great so far. We haven't had really any problems today and everything's running smoothly. I'll show you behind me. I'm here at where they're counting the absentee ballots in the back of the Pulaski County Regional Center. They're about 75 to 80% done. I'm told that they'll be finished counting those around 9 o'clock and all votes will be counted around 11 p.m. And we can also expect those online results at 7:30 immediately. So they put them on a hard copy and they put them online right away. And now the commissioners meeting is starting. So the Pulaski County Commissioners are meeting and talking about how they're getting those results in. So I'll send it back to you for now. Live in Little Rock, I'm Ashley Godwin.
All right, Ashley, thank you. And one of the biggest races that we are watching tonight is the one for Arkansas's 2nd Congressional District. Republican U.S. Representative French Hill is facing off against Democratic challenger Joyce Elliott, and polls show it could be a close one. THV11's Melissa Zigowitz has been following Joyce Elliott's campaign this afternoon. First, though, we want to check in with THV11's Rolly Hoyt. He has more on Representative Hill's day today.
Thank you, Dawn. We are at the GOP headquarters in celebration that they've got going on here at the Embassy Suites. It looks more traditional than we would expect in the pandemic, but that is one of the things that the French Hill's campaign has strived to do, is to keep it as traditional as possible as they've went throughout these last few weeks and as this race has tightened. That goes into including how he spent his day today, getting out to the outlying counties, trying to get his main supporters out there in places like White County, in Beebe, and then in the suburbs, places like West Little Rock, and all-important Saline County, where he needs a big turnout in order to keep his seat in Congress. He's been there for 3 terms already, trying to continue that run into a 4th term this year. Talked to one of his campaign spokespeople, J.R. Davis. He's encouraged by what has so far appeared to be a smooth election so far, especially in Pulaski County, where they had so many early votes, what he called front-end loaded votes. And now, as those results start to come in, they're going to start to analyze how much they need to make up within Pulaski County out in those surrounding counties to determine whether or not he gets that trip back to Washington. They're watching these same trends across town in the Joyce Elliott campaign. That's where we catch up with Melissa Zigowitz.
Yeah, hey, Rolly. While you are inside at a watch party, I am outside of Senator Joyce Elliott's campaign headquarters. No watch party for her here tonight because she did not want to risk anyone being exposed to COVID-19. Now, Senator, she just wrapped up talking to voters all day today. She was out at a ton of polling locations. I actually met up with her at one of those locations out in North Little Rock at Harris Elementary. She tells me that she is more optimistic this time around. She actually tried running for this seat back in 2010, but lost with just 38% of the vote. And of course, with her trying to unseat French Hill and this being a race that is neck and neck right now, we are going to be watching those polls very closely. For now, I'm going to send it back to you guys in the studio.
I'll never forget, Lance, when I was in sports here at THV11, I was doing a story on a young athlete at Robinson High School. It was 2000, and I went into one of the kids' classes to ask the teacher if we could get video of him in class while he was in that teacher's class. The teacher was Joyce Elliott. And since that point, I've watched her political career become very, very prominent, not only running for office, but also in the state legislature.
That's right, done a lot of stuff in the state legislature, an educator by profession, and has carried her passion for education into the legislature as well, working on a lot of those education issues. And we're about to start seeing some results trickle in here in just a few minutes as Pulaski County and polls across the state close. But yeah, an interesting story from Joyce Elliott, certainly.
And you got an early look. You got a peek on your little computer there, and we'll start showing it here in a minute, but you're going to be impressed with the numbers immediately coming out of Pulaski County by the early voters.
That's right.
Just keep watching for it here on THV11's YouTube channel. Marlisa, there are three main issues on the ballot that we are tracking tonight, including one that many Arkansans are watching closely.
Yeah, that's right, Craig. Mercedes McKay is actually breaking down those numbers for us tonight and has much more from both sides of the issue one argument. Mercedes.
Marlisa, issue number one is all about the highway sales and use tax. So basically, voters will decide whether or not they want to continue that 0.5% sales tax, which we currently have, which will go towards state infrastructure projects. Basically, this is money for roads and bridges and county streets and city streets. And that is set to expire in June of 2023. Now, earlier today, like you said, I caught up with supporters and opponents of the issue. The supporters told me that this is the only long-term solution for highway funding, while opponents say they don't believe a sales tax should be put into the Constitution. Here's what they had to say.
On a statewide level, we have all sorts of needs with regard to I-30 and 412 and 67, 167 and major thoroughfares.
This tax does not expire until 2023. We have the opportunity to come up with a better plan that's more in line with, say, use taxes.
Both of them told me that they are cautiously optimistic about tonight's results. I'll obviously be checking in with them. Now, the people that are for issue one are set up at the Embassy Suites in West Little Rock for a small watch party, whereas issue one, opponents are actually just kind of staying in their own house because of COVID, not really having a watch party, but staying in touch. And like we said, we have two other issues we are watching closely. Now, issue number two would change how term limits would work in the state legislature. If the majority votes for the issue, it would let lawmakers stay in office a total of 24 years instead of 16. But they would have to take a 4-year break in the middle of it, and a majority vote against would keep the current limits in place. Now, we also have issue 3 on the ballot, which would put stricter requirements in place for ballot issues. A majority vote for means signatures would have to be collected earlier in the year, and they would need signatures from 45 counties instead of just 15. A majority vote against keeps the current process for voter-initiated laws and amendments in place. I'll send it back to you in the studio, Marlisa, but I will always be tracking these results tonight for all these 3 ballot issues.
All right, thank you, Mercedes. All right, we are interested in these issues, of course. The Arkansan taking the biggest interest in it would have to be the governor, especially with issue 1.
That's right. Governor Asa Hutchinson has really thrown his political capital behind issue 1. He's campaigned around the state in recent weeks for issue 1. Really a key part of his plan for highway maintenance and highway construction in Arkansas, and really would like to see that passed to keep up with all the maintenance and construction that we require in Arkansas. Arkansas is one of those states that has just a lot of highway mileage for a state our size, and so it's been a bit of a pickle the last several years for us to try to find some kind of a plan or solution to keep up with our highway maintenance needs, and it's the old ways aren't working as well as they used to, the gas taxes and such, because cars are more efficient, people are moving to electric automobiles, and so you don't get the revenue that you used to get from those kinds of things. And so this is a way to extend an existing sales tax and perhaps keep some money coming in to at least keep up with some maintenance and some key construction projects that we're trying to accomplish in the state.
While we're here on YouTube Live and while we're live on social media, you're going to hear me do this a lot because it means I've got a message coming from the control room, and I got a message from the control room. Let's see, our polls, Lance, have been closed for now 10 minutes, and they've already called it the state for Trump. Donald
well, there
Trump
you
gets
go.
the big check mark and
Big
gets
surprise,
our
big
big
surprise.
6 electoral votes.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, this is a state that Trump won with 60% of the vote in 2016. He's probably looking to actually improve upon that margin this year, judging by the Arkansas poll, which has him north of that. Trump is extremely popular in Arkansas. This is a ruby red state now, and that was one of the big takeaways from the Arkansas poll that we recently saw was that the conversion from a Democratic stronghold in the South, a long Democratic tradition here in Arkansas, has fully taken place over the last 10 years, and we've seen it come to fruition. And you actually have been studying that history recently about how all that's
on the
happened.
recent report, it was when Barack Obama was elected that pretty much slammed the door on the Democrats, because you had a lot of charismatic Democrats that held the red tide back, beginning with Dale Bumpers to David Pryor to Bill Clinton to Jim Guy Tucker to Mike Beebe. Mike Beebe may be the most admirable of all, simply because he was in the middle of a red takeover.
That's right.
But once Barack Obama was elected, then that pretty much sealed the deal for the Republicans.
That's right. So that has happened now, and so it's no surprise to see Donald Trump declared the winner early tonight. That's probably going to translate into some other races too. The Senate race, I think, is one obviously that's going to show a lot of Republican support for the incumbent Tom Cotton. Tom Cotton, who was a key figure in that transformation from Democrats to Republicans. You remember he vanquished in 2014, Mark Pryor from the Senate. I think Mark Pryor was, he was among the last Democrats standing in Congress for Arkansas, and so he will likely have a pretty big margin of victory tonight as well.
A man who was pursuing a law degree until 9/11, and then Tom Cotton was so incensed with 9/11, he goes out and he joins and gets a part of the 101st Airborne and is in Afghanistan and Iraq. And it shows you how history can alter,
can change a lot of things.
The progress of someone's career. It did for Tom Cotton, and now it looks like he's probably going to be a shoe-in for the U.S. Senate. Talk about timing. We actually have the report. We did a study of the history of the Democrats and their fade in Arkansas. We're going to show you that as we wait on our first numbers. This was Donald Trump in Little Rock in 2016, a packed Barton Coliseum. This image, a symbol of change in Arkansas. Governor Asa Hutchinson and all statewide officers, Republican. The state legislature, Republican. Over the last 50-plus years, a complete shift. I turned to Skip Rutherford, Dean of the University of Arkansas School of Public Service. No one is more well-versed in Arkansas political history because he has seen it up close.
When the Voting Rights Act, Civil Rights Act were passed in the 60s, the Solid South moved from Democrat to Republican. The white voters left the Democratic Party. Race was the main issue. It's still a major issue in party politics.
Richard Nixon would seize the moment and accelerate the erosion of the Democratic Party in the South. And Rutherford pointed out to me, Arkansas had another influence.
People from white suburbia, from St. Louis, Kansas City, other parts of the Midwest that moved to North Arkansas. And brought with them a Republican tradition. We tend to forget.
The election of John Paul Hammerschmidt, a Republican, in northwest Arkansas in 1966, as well as Win Rockefeller for governor, were early signals.
So Arkansas started shifting long before people realized Arkansas was shifting.
And yet, among all the southern states,
Arkansas was the last to go.
Dale Bumpers, David Pryor, Bill Clinton, Jim Guy Tucker, Mike Beebe, pragmatic, fiscally conservative Democrats stood in the way until
in 2008 and 2012 with the nomination and election of Barack Obama.
And that did it. While Governor Beebe would serve 2 terms during the Obama administration, Democrats one by one were voted out. And the state that had been the last to go was now the life of the party. So there you go. That's exactly how it went down.
That's how it happens.
And it was a surprise, too, when I heard Skip Rutherford, Dean Rutherford with the Clinton School, talk about demographics moving into northwest Arkansas. I had not realized that they were coming from the midwestern part of the country, which was a red area.
That's right. Yeah, yeah. So where people are going and living, that says a lot about your politics that you're going to have there as well. So.
Which takes us to the only real watch party that's a watch party, and Roly Hoyt, who's at the the Republican watch party, they've got to be liking what they see with the check mark going to Donald Trump from Arkansas. Roly.
In fact, a round of applause went up from this party with the party, as Chairman Doyle Webb referred to it when he took the stage almost at 7:35, moments after the Associated Press called the race for Donald Trump. And he asked whether or not Arkansas could be among the leaders in the country in vote percentage for Donald Trump. We'll see how that goes as the night goes along. There are some other states that do support the president almost as strongly as Arkansas does, but they do have reason to celebrate at least early on here. Then they also are looking forward to a visit from Senator Tom Cotton, who has yet to have his race called, though CBS News is listing that as a likely pickup, and they've been highly confident about that just with the independent candidate that he's been running against as his opposition. So that is the next big event that we are waiting for here at the Embassy Suites. In the meantime, drinks are served, dinner is served, and they'll continue to have a socially distant, they hope, safe party as they continue on through the evening.
And that brings up an interesting point. We have everybody back together in the studio, but we are practicing social distancing too here at THV 11. Prove it. See there?
We're not even supposed
to. Apart. Okay. Dawn Scott is in another zip code. No, I'm just kidding. She's actually around the corner, but she's way far away with some numbers. You got some numbers, Dawn?
It does feel like I'm in another zip code. We've got walls between us, and it feels like they're on the other side of the building. But hey, we're all here for the purpose of bringing you the information on election night. One of the most important things we as journalists can do is to share these results with you in a nonpartisan manner. And we want to go through some of the issues that you've been voting on. Issue 1, the highway tax there. Those for it right now stand at 58% and those against at 42%. This is not a huge percentage of precincts reporting at this point, but this is where we stand right now after the polls have been closed for 17 minutes now. Issue 2 on term limits, whether there should be that 4-year gap in between the term limits there. Those for that, 57%, and those against, 43%, again, with just a small number of precincts reporting. Now, issue number 3 regards the initiative process, 59% against and 41% for. And those are a look at the issues right now, again, with just about 18 minutes now since the polls have been closed in Arkansas. We'll send things back over to you all.
Think those percentages are going to hold?
They're in line with some of the polling that we've seen on those 3 issues so far, but it could change. I mean, we're talking about 1% of the vote that's in so far, so there's still a lot more counting to be done. But so far, that tends to kind of hold with some of the things that we've seen previously in polls, particularly the Arkansas poll.
I think Arkansans might have gotten comfortable, if that's the right word, paying that tax, that highway tax, or not that. It's been around for so long.
That could be.
And maybe everybody thought of their street in their neighborhood that could be fixed after the state Supreme Court got involved and said you couldn't use it for anything over 4 lanes. But anyway.
Right. They're going to finally get to that pothole, perhaps. But
I got a street for them.
There's a lot of arguments to that, too. But, the other argument could be, there's always the argument as to whether it's a tax increase or not, right? And so some people will say, well, it's a tax increase because this half-cent sales tax was set to expire. And now if you vote for it, it's going to continue. Mm-hmm. And so you've raised my taxes even though they were, when it was supposed to go away. So there's that argument too that has some resonance with some people, and it has pulled some opposition. Issue 1, the Americans for Prosperity. That's the anti-tax group, or a group that a lot of their positions are anti-tax, and so. They have come out against it. They've registered with the Ethics Commission to be a registered opposition. They've spent money against it and advocated against it. So it's we'll see what happens with it.
Here we go.
It's got some back and forth. So
game on. Let's go over to Marlisa Goldsmith, who is socially distant. She's way on the other side of the studio.
Yeah, Craig, no walls in between us, but we are pretty far apart. 1 week out from Election Day was when we started receiving more and more questions coming into our Verify team. Tonight's topic focuses on the counting of mail-in ballots. Here's what a THV11 viewer asked us. Is it true that all mail-in ballots will no longer be counted after 7:30 p.m. today on Election Day? Even if I mailed my ballot a month prior, I understand we have a mandate that states all mail-in ballots must be counted before 7:30 p.m. despite when it was postmarked or received. So here's the deal. We reached out to Daniel Schultz, State Board of Election Commissioners Director. He verifies this claim is false, folks. He says state law requires all absentee ballots, which are sufficient and which are returned on time to the county clerk, to be counted regardless of how long it takes to complete the process. He says if there are still ballots that need to be counted when the polls close, they will keep going until they're all counted. So again, a lot of questions rolling in, and we will continue to answer them throughout the night. Back over to you, Craig and Lance.
Okay, Lance and I are now going to visit until we do our CBS cut-in again in just a few minutes. And the one thing I wanted to bring up with you, I went through a lot of the candidates for state legislature and was amazed. I had not realized how many women candidates that we're seeing, primarily from the Democratic side, although Republicans have several incumbent women in state legislative seats. But Democrats really got pushed into this by what happened in the midterm elections back in 2018, don't you think?
That's right. Yeah, we've seen some key women candidates run races and win here in Arkansas, and we've seen them in Northwest Arkansas too, and then here in Central Arkansas as well. It's a growing constituency. It's a growing constituency nationally when you look at Congress as well. They've had more women running in races and winning seats in the past few cycles than they've had historically, and so that's very much a thing. It's a trend that's happening, and it's good to see more people getting involved in the political process.
You got Alyssa Dixon in District 34 going for Jane English's seat. You've got, who else? Kayla Applegate going for District 39 in Maumelle, going against Mark Lowry, who's an established Republican.
Right. Yeah.
And you have Janie Cotton, second oldest of 8 children, and she's the first African-American woman to serve as CEO of a community mental health organization, but she saw an opening to run, and you have to believe, healthcare at the top of her list.
Absolutely. That's one of several races we're watching tonight, in fact, for the possibility of Democrats flipping those seats and flipping them from Republican to Democrat. And we've got a handful of those, and women are indeed playing a big part in those races.
Well, we'll be checking these totals naturally. We're still about a minute away from going back
Well, then
to
another one we need to talk about too is District 32, which covers much of West Little Rock. That's the race between the incumbent Republican Jim Sorvillo and Ashley Hudson, who is a Democrat.
Oh, yeah.
She's an attorney. She's raised the most money of any other Democrat running for State House this year.
Really?
Very well funded, going up against another established Republican. I think party leaders of both parties are watching this race pretty closely too. If we're seeing big turnout in Pulaski County, this is a good sign for possibly for some of those Democratic candidates.
Ashley Hudson, a mother of 4, and she always complained about her representatives in the legislature. She said, one of these days I'm going to run, and one of her kids said, and I quote, "Mom, why don't you do it?"
Yeah.
So here she is.
So there you go.
We're talking about her on election night. She listened to her kid. All right, we're headed to CBS. All right. Just now on YouTube, I said we were headed to CBS. We're coming back from CBS. Okay, welcome to Election Central. I'm Craig O'Neill, joined by Arkansas Business's Lance Turner.
And now we have team coverage both here in the studio and across Central Arkansas, and now the polls are closed.
Marlisa Goldsmith and Don Scott will be answering any questions that pop up as the night goes on. They're also going to be talking to experts as results roll in and checking in with our crews in the field. That's your cue, Marlisa.
Thanks so much, Craig. Our crews are following the most talked about races here in Arkansas, including one that is gaining national attention tonight. We first want to check in with our own Ashley Godwin, who has much more on today's voter turnout. She's actually been watching crews of people counting the ballots. Ashley.
That's right, Marlisa. I am still here at the Pulaski County Regional Center, where behind me they're counting absentee ballots still, but the commissioners were in a meeting just now. They're still in their meeting, and they're getting election results all night long. We got our first handouts of results just, I think, about 20 minutes ago, and they were scrambling, looking through them. I think only 1% has been counted so far, so we don't have enough information yet to conclude anything, but they were just moved back in the back where there was more room for them to spread out and keep counting those ballots. So I'm going to stick with it and keep giving you the information you need here on THV 11 News.
Ashley, thank you. And one of the biggest races that we're watching tonight is the one for Arkansas's 2nd Congressional District here in Central Arkansas. Republican U.S. Representative French Hill is in office right now, and he faces off against Democratic challenger Joyce Elliott. Polls show this could be a very close race. Melissa Zigowitz has been following Elliott's campaign. We first, though, want to check in with Rolly Hoyt following French Hill today.
Yeah, Don, we got our first numbers that we can chew on, and as we've been talking about in the lead up to this is a big difference between what happens in the city of Little Rock and North Little Rock and what happens in the outlying counties. And the first early vote numbers are in. As you heard Ashley mention just a few moments ago, in Pulaski County, it shows that Joyce Elliott among early voters had a 62 percentage point to 38 percentage point lead in the big city. But out in Saline County, the early numbers show that it is French Hill with 70% over 30%. Good early signs in how the early voting went in those two distinct counties. We'll look for similar numbers to come in. It's going to be a seesaw battle as we go through the evening. Watching the other half of that seesaw is Melissa Zigowitz.
Yeah, hey, Rolly, as you mentioned, early voting numbers here in Pulaski County show 62% support for Senator Joyce Elliott, but I spoke with her campaign manager, and he says they are not celebrating any type of victory before every single county is done reporting. Now, no watch party for Senator Joyce Elliott here tonight as well. She did not want to risk anyone being exposed to COVID-19. She also just wrapped up talking to voters all across the county and all throughout Central Arkansas. Actually, I caught up with her at one of those polling locations in North Little Rock, and I spoke with her, and she said that she's more optimistic running this time around. She actually tried running for this seat 10 years ago, but lost. For now, I'm going to send it back to you.
Joyce Elliott got her undergraduate degree at Southern Arkansas University, graduate degree at Ouachita Baptist University, educated in Arkansas. Now she has aspirations, but she's got to do well outside Pulaski County somewhere.
Yeah, got a big problem outside Pulaski County. Got a big problem really outside of Little Rock when you think about it, where a lot of those votes are going to come from. I mean, because West Little Rock is probably not an area that she may do too well in. But yeah, that's pretty. Rolly pointing that out was really good. Saline County, Hill 70%, Elliott 30%. Pulaski County at the moment, Elliott 62%, Hill 48%, and that does really sum up for you in a really clear way just kind of what the dynamic is in the 2nd district right now.
Real quickly, I got tickled because I watched Rolly's live shot and I saw in the background Tim Griffin getting up to speak to the crowd.
Indeed.
He'll be in the center of the election central in a couple of years.
That's right. He can rest easy for a little bit right now, but here after the holidays, I suspect things are about to get real for Tim Griffin. And
he's about to become an election story, but the big story tonight, of course, is THV 11's Election Night Central. We're going to be talking to you on YouTube live streaming on THV11.com, and going back to CBS for now on air. Welcome back to THV 11 Election Central. We're so glad you bought a computer and you're following us on our live stream and here on YouTube Live. And this, I'll tell you what, this is so much fun. This is, I'm sorry, I'm going to go have to say it. This is so much fun. On election night, whether you're a Democrat, Republican, Independent, Libertarian, whatever, we all come together to see how our votes did.
That's
to
right.
see who the winners and losers are. So
That's right.
on this night alone, with all this drama, we are together.
Yes.
You can't say that often
I
in
know,
this country.
especially not today. Yeah, I'm here in the studio for the first time since March, so I'm feeling pretty interested in what's happening here today.
Lance Turner of Arkansas Business joining me, of course. Marlisa Goldsmith, Dawn Scott answering any questions that pop up as this night goes on. So far, we haven't had any questions.
No, it's been pretty
But
smooth
we are
so
probably
far.
going to get some. They're going to be talking with experts as the results start rolling in, and they are starting to roll in. They're going to be checking in with the field crews. And let's first go to, who do you want, Lance? Who do you want to see first, Marlisa or Dawn?
Let's
Your
do
choice.
Marlisa.
Marlisa, all right.
You all are a mess. There are 3 main issues on the ballot we are tracking for you tonight, including one that many Arkansans are watching very closely. THV 11's Mercedes McKay is breaking those down for us tonight, making it a lot easier to understand, and has more from both sides of issue 1 argument.
Marlisa, issue number 1 is all about the highway sales and use tax. And as Dawn said earlier, some of those votes are coming in 55% for and 45% against. Now, I have spoken with the supporter who told me they are remaining optimistic, as well as the opponent. So let me break down what this issue actually means for y'all. Voters are deciding whether or not to continue that 0.5% sales tax, which would go towards state infrastructure projects. Basically, this is money for highways, bridges, county roads, city streets. Now, this sales tax is set to expire in June of 2023. And earlier today, when I spoke to the supporters, she told me that they think that this is the only long-term solution for highway funding, while the opponents had something else to say in regards to that they don't believe the sales tax should be part of our Constitution.
On a statewide level, we have all sorts of needs with regard to I-30 and 412 and 67, 167 and major thoroughfares.
This tax does not expire until 2023. We have the opportunity to come up with a better plan that's more in line with, say, use taxes.
Like I said earlier, just texted both of them a little bit ago, and they are both remaining optimistic. So they're actually surprised by where the results were right now. So let me break down those other 2 issues that were on the ballot today. Issue 2 would change how term limits work in the state legislature. If the majority votes for the issue, it would let lawmakers stay in office a total of 24 years instead of 16. But they would have to take a 4-year break in the middle of it, and a majority vote against would keep the current limits in place. Now on to issue 3, that would put stricter requirements in place for ballot issues. A majority vote for means signatures would have to be collected earlier in the year, and they would need signatures from 45 counties instead of just 15. And a majority vote against keeps the current process for voter-initiated laws and amendments. Now again, I will be tracking all these results tonight, and I'll send it back to you in the studio.
Thanks so much, Mercedes, for that update. You all know 2020 looks a little bit different than it has in election years past. And so usually we'd have a lot of experts joining us in and out of the THV 11 studio here. We're switching things up a little bit, forced to get a little creative in order for us to follow COVID-19 guidelines and restrictions. So we've turned to using Zoom. And joining me now, our first interview for the night is Susan Inman, an Arkansas election expert. Good evening to you, Susan. Thanks so much for joining us. Can you hear us, Susan? Uh-oh. Let's see. Okay, so we're going to check back in with Susan and see if we can get her sound up. Can you hear me now, Susan?
Can you hear me now?
She may be muted. Okay, it looks like she's about to unmute. Bear with us.
I feel like we're having a staff meeting.
You all know. I know you all are working through this pandemic just like we are, and you've had technical difficulties. We're going to see if we can get this situation resolved here with technical difficulties and send things back over to Craig and Lance for now.
Well, I hope she can get that, or we can get that fixed, because I want to hear from her. She didn't have to face what has been faced this year with all the early voting.
That's right.
And you have to believe that the early voting, which has been the big story up until now, had to be somewhat of a surprise even to the election officials who were kind of expecting it, but not to this level.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think it ended up being a little bit bigger than we even expected it to be. And then it's just a manpower issue at a certain point. You've got to handle all those ballots. You got to count them. You have to organize them first. Then you have to count them. Then you have to feed them through the machine. You got to do all these things, and you have to do it safely and properly. When you throw COVID-19 in the mix, that complicates matters as well. You've got people. You've got to find a big space to put everybody, and you've got to make sure everyone's wearing PPE and all of that. So really, it's been an unprecedented challenge for these poll workers, but they've had, I think, a record number of volunteers. They've had people who are stepping forward and said, you know what, we're gonna take part in this. They've recognized that poll workers typically are older citizens and could be more susceptible to COVID-19.
Well,
and so
and
younger people stepping in.
You bring up an interesting point. A lot of people, the older volunteers, the ones that had traditionally done it, stepped back and said, no, we're not going to do it because of COVID-19. So the call went out from Central Arkansas to get more poll workers, and I'll be doggone if Brian Pope didn't say that they had over 1,000 people apply. So this election season, we've seen a big turnout with voters. There was also a big turnout for volunteers.
That's right, yeah. And it could set the tone for future elections. I mean, wouldn't it be wonderful if this was kind of the model in terms of more volunteers, younger volunteers, more people wanting to get involved in that process, and we could see more people doing this now may realize, it's kind of nice to vote absentee when you can do it, or it's kind of nice to early vote when you can do it, and we may start seeing election day. I think election day probably wasn't as busy today, right? Because everyone had voted before.
Exactly.
And so we'll see how all this carries through. There's going to be so many things that change because of COVID-19, so many habits that are going to change, and this may be just another one of those.
And there'd been a big push to make election day a day off so people would have a day off to go vote. Well, with early voting, people are getting that done, may not need the day off.
That's right.
That may just step back.
Got a couple Saturdays in there and then 2 weeks. So.
Well, we're looking at numbers, but they're slow to come. We're putting them on the screen as soon as we get them. We do expect this to be a huge red state, and as soon as I say that, there you see Tom Cotton is the declared winner for the U.S. Senate seat.
There you go. Yes, no surprise. 62% of the vote to Ricky Dale Harrington's 38%. If those numbers hold, I mean, Ricky Dale Harrington. Let's not slight the Libertarian candidate here. He's performing very well, and may end up being one of the better performers among Libertarian Senate candidates in the country because of how this race sort of shook out, and his candidacy too. I think when people saw him by himself at the AETN or the Arkansas PBS debate, I think a lot of people liked what they saw. They liked that they were able to vote for him. So,
and also Tom Cotton kind of tied in with Donald Trump on most things, especially in the criticism of China.
Definitely.
And tied in with the president, who of course was declared an early winner in the state of Arkansas. Where do we? Let me ask the booth. Where do we want to go? We're so loose here on your computer. Oh, we are, okay. I've just been told we're waiting on Tom Cotton's victory speech. Do we want to go back to row it? All right, let's look at congressional races.
That's right. There are others. There's the 2nd District, of course, which is sort of the marquee race. That's really the only other congressional races tonight do have Democratic candidates. But this one in the 2nd District, of course, is the one that Democrats have the best shot at flipping. And right now, with 43% reporting, look, it's starting to tighten up as we expected. French Hill, 51% of the vote, and Joyce Elliott at 49%.
What did you tell me? What did you say about Clark Tucker 2 years ago? How close did he get? He
came within 6 points.
Well, Joyce Elliott's beating that right now, but you're only at 43% of the vote.
This one's going to be tighter than that, I think. I think people in both campaigns expect it to be tighter than that, and the numbers are bearing it out so far. It's polled tight every which way you can poll it, and it's gonna be a tight poll tonight when it's the official poll, the poll that the voters actually take part in. So,
District 3, you've got Steve Womack going against Celeste Williams. Celeste Williams, who is a family nurse practitioner. Now we're going to show you the U.S. Senate result. Tom Cotton declared the winner 62-38. By the way, Ricky Dale Harrington lives in Pine Bluff, and in 2016 took the job at Cummins as a pastor and treatment coordinator.
wow.
And his wife is in the Navy.
There you go.
So there's Steve Womack's numbers up in Northwest Arkansas, and no surprise there. But again, we were talking about how the Democrats, how women candidates are coming and emerging from the Arkansas Democratic Party. Celeste Williams decided to try and take him on. Right now she's, well, it's typical for Northwest Arkansas and a Republican up there.
She's a 20-year family nurse practitioner and a foster parent, lives outside Bella Vista, and healthcare is very much on her mind and has been sort of the theme of her campaign for that seat, that 3rd district seat there. 4% of precincts reporting, still a lot of vote to come in on that race, but Steve Womack, the incumbent, clearly has the advantage in that race.
Celeste Williams, by the way, is very proud of her dog.
Ah, okay.
She has a Rhodesian Ridgeback, and she has it displayed prominently on her website.
I don't even know what those look like, but that's fantastic.
She also has chickens, ducks, rabbits, and a bearded dragon, so we're waiting on that Rhodesian Ridgeback boat, which could turn that whole race around. You never know.
Transform it all.
And District 4, do we want to talk about District 4? You got actually 3 candidates in that one. Bruce Westerman, who has a big lead, no surprise. William Bobby Hanson, who is the Democrat, and Frank Gilbert, who has, this is the interesting about Frank, he has run as a Libertarian in every election since 2012. So this was his choice this time.
That's what he's doing this time. He has run for governor in 2014, he ran for U.S. Senate in 2016, and he ran for lieutenant governor in 2018. And continuing to uphold the Libertarian flag. That's right, keeping the Libertarians in those races. Bruce Westerman, of course, the incumbent, Hot Springs native, was elected in 2014, a former state representative as well, and
played football for the Hogs.
I didn't know that. I should have known that.
He was a Razorback.
That's there you
I think
go.
he was on special teams, but he was a Razorback. Okay. He's got the letter.
They count too. That's right.
And introduced the Trillion Trees Act.
Yes.
Which has yet to be approved in the House on behalf of Donald Trump and Ivanka, whose idea it was.
Right.
So he took the sponsorship of that legislation. And I've just been told by the booth, we can go to Tom Cotton and Rolly Hoyt.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you all so much for that great Arkansas welcome. And thank you all for being here tonight. I don't know if you heard a little bit of the news. We just had a smashing victory. And I want to say that I am once again humbled and honored to be representing the people of Arkansas in the United States Senate. And I want to thank all of you who came here tonight, all of you who are watching at home tonight. Many of you have been with me from the very beginning. And many of you shared a night like this with me and my family 6 years ago. Now, a lot of things changed over 6 years. You know, back then, Anna and I were still newlyweds, and she was an expectant mother. Now, Gabriel's a kindergartner, and his little son is going to be 4 years old. Oh, I'm sorry, his little brother is going to be 4 years old. Getting ahead of myself for him. So, of course, it is way past their bedtime, so they couldn't be here, and their mother couldn't be here with them either. But I know that she's watching at home, and I just want to say, Anna, hun, I love you. I couldn't have done any of it without you. And although Anna couldn't be here with me tonight, she's been with me every step of the way for 6 years now. And I got to say that when I think about my family and I think about Anna and my hopes and aspirations for our boys, my thoughts can't help but turn pretty quickly to you and your families and to Arkansas's families, because our families are what really make our state and our nation so blessed and so wonderful and so distinctive. And it's my commitment to serve and protect you and your families in the United States Senate. I think about all the incredible stories I've heard from the families I've met during my time serving you. I think about the families of police officers who wake up every morning and put on the badge and put on the uniform, and they go out to keep us safe. And they don't know if they're going to come back that night. And their families who see them out the door every day, proud of what they do to protect our communities, but wondering when they say goodbye if that's going to be the last time. Even while they have to listen to some who are critical and scornful of what they do to protect us and to protect our families and communities. Or to look at it from a different perspective, I think about some of the families I've met who have tragically been the victims of violent crime, who are still waiting for justice because misguided politicians think that the way to stop crime is to coddle criminals, not to stop criminals. I think about families that have tragically been visited by the demons of addiction, moms and dads who have lost a kid to an overdose, because too many politicians look the other way as Mexican drug cartels smuggle drugs across our southern border, or Chinese drug smugglers made fentanyl and other synthetic opioids and flooded them into our streets, poisoning our kids in a kind of reverse opium war. And I think about the victims of those drugs. That's not a statistic in a criminal report. That's not a line in an annual summary. It is a daily living tragedy for all of those families. I think about the families who are working hard in our farms or in our factories, trying to make ends meet, especially in these troubled times, trying to get the hours they need, maybe work a little overtime. But too often, giant multinational corporations have sent their factories overseas, outsourced their jobs and their dreams to cheaper foreign labor overseas, or they've imported foreign labor here to take their jobs here, while politicians encouraged it all. And I think of the families of our troops, all of our Blue Star families, who are so proud of their young sons and daughters serving our nation, wearing the flag of our nation on their shoulder, whether they just reported to basic training or whether they're with the Navy SEALs and Delta Force tonight, ready to fly into action. Again, bursting with patriotism and pride at what their children are doing to protect our families and protect our nation, but always fearful and anxious about a missed phone call that was scheduled or an unexpected knock at the door. And I think about our great veterans and the families they left behind when they went to go serve overseas. But also those veterans when they came home, the greatest generation who World War II, or my dad's generation from Vietnam, or my battle buddies from our generation's war. To teach our children and our grandchildren that America is a country worth fighting for. And the lessons that those veterans taught to their families were right. America is a great nation, worth fighting for, not a nation that we should be ashamed of or ever apologize for. But too many people in our supposed ruling class disagree. They're embarrassed of America. They think America is a hateful or irredeemable land, something that we should apologize for. Well, tonight, Arkansas, you sent a message loud and clear. America is a great country that is, in fact, worth fighting for. These pampered athletes who kneel before our flag during the national anthem, or politicians who want to defund the police that protect them on their security details, or professors who want to indoctrinate our kids to hate America, or CEOs in big corporations that give millions of dollars naively to radical left-wing groups, or the actual rioters in the streets who want to destroy our heritage and tear down statues of giants like George Washington and Abraham Lincoln and Andrew Jackson. This is the message you've sent, that you do not want to have that in Arkansas and you do not want to have that in America. And my friends, I tell you, I have heard your message loud and clear, and I promise you, I will never bend the knee to a politically correct mob. Arkansas didn't send me to the United States Senate to kowtow.
Wow, Lance. He was out trumping Trump.
I was taking notes.
That's a speech that could have been written by Donald Trump, and Tom Cotton was, quite frankly, delivering a little bit better, a little bit more emphasis.
Found it to be a very Trumpy speech, talking about police families, victims of violent crimes, veterans, troops, and then, of course, decrying pampered athletes, people in the defund the police movement, people rioting in the streets. And that he would never be a politically correct, or never bow to the politically correct.
Which is a phrase right out of the Trump playbook.
Yeah, Cotton is widely seen as a contender for the 2024 Republican presidential nomination.
And quite frankly, that's the best I've seen him speak, because he tends to go 500 miles an hour as that automatron. He's going to get it all out. He's going to get everything out. He wants to say all these things. He wants to say all these conservative things. He gets them out and he does it very quick. That had timing. That speech had timing. That was as good as Trump, if not better, in so many different ways.
Yeah. I think we're going to see a lot of Tom Cotton honing those skills and working on that speech in the coming months.
For those of you watching the live stream and YouTube, you just saw what could be a preview of 2024 with Tom Cotton maybe entering the presidential primary.
That's right. But let's take care of 2020 first. Let's do that first. Can't we please?
Am I getting ahead of it just a little bit?
Just a little bit, but I appreciate that. But let's do 2020 first.
All right, now let me find out what we're going to do. What are we doing?
We're going to set up for our live cut-in.
Oh, live cut-in.
That's right, which is coming up.
Okay,
so we'll be back in just
Thank you, Lance.
a minute or two.
Thank you. I couldn't understand. Thank you. Election Central, I'm Craig O'Neill, joined by Arkansas Business's Lance Turner.
And we have team coverage here in the studio and across Central Arkansas, and the results are coming in. Moments ago, we watched as Senator Tom Cotton declared a victory in his race.
And he gave a very conservative and rebel-rousing speech, rabble-rousing, I should say. Tom Cotton, a big winner tonight over Ricky Dale Harrington Jr., 63-37. All right, moving along, Marlisa Goldsmith and Dawn Scott answering any questions that pop up as the night goes on. They'll also be talking to experts as results roll in and checking in with our crews in the field. Marlisa, to you.
Thanks so much, Craig. As you mentioned, our crews are following the most talked about races here in Arkansas, including one that is gaining national attention tonight. We begin with Ashley Godwin, who's following today's voter turnout. She's been watching closely as the absentee ballots have been counted. Ashley, what's it like now?
Marlisa, I am happy to say that they just got their last box of absentee ballots. So they are counting that last box and getting ready to get done, to be done with counting those ballots. And as you can see behind me, we've got just still a handful of people left that are counting these ballots. I'm told that they will be done around 9 o'clock. And then all votes for Arkansas are estimated to be done by 11 o'clock. And we're getting those votes online as well. So we're getting those results in as they come through, as well as Jordan Howington is in the commissioners meeting getting those handout printed copies as well. But we're going to stick with it. I'll send it back to you in the studio.
Ashley Godwin, thank you. We'll be seeing you throughout this night. And one of the biggest races that we're watching right now is the one for Arkansas's 2nd Congressional District here in Central Arkansas. Republican U.S. Representative French Hill faces off against Democratic challenger Joyce Elliott, and polls show this could be a very close race. THV11's Melissa Zigowitz has been following Joyce Elliott's campaign. We first, though, want to check in with THV11's Rolly Hoyt. He is with French Hill tonight.
Yeah, thank you, Don. We are just listening behind me is Attorney General Leslie Rutledge following in a wave that led off by Senator Tom Cotton in his victory speech. Both of those high-profile Republican leaders in this state hoping their momentum carries over for French Hill. By my last count, looking at the results as they've come in from early voting, it's about a 2,000 vote spread right now in favor of Hill, ahead of Joyce Elliott. But there are still a lot of today's votes that still have to be counted. And as you heard Ashley mention, some absentee ballots that also need to be tallied up. Those will be very important for the folks that Melissa Zigowitz is following tonight over at Joyce Elliott's headquarters.
Yeah, hey, Rolly. Early voting numbers here in Pulaski County show Joyce Elliott has 63% support here, but her campaign manager tells me they're not exactly celebrating yet. They're not going to start celebrating until every single county is done reporting. Now, throughout the day, Joyce Elliott's campaign strategy has been going around to different polls. I actually met up with her at a poll in North Little Rock, and I spoke with her, and she says she's very optimistic about the outcome tonight. She actually tried running for the 2nd Congressional District seat 10 years ago, but lost. But again, like I said, she's more optimistic this time around. And with this race being a neck and neck, we certainly are going to be keeping a close eye on this race. For now, back to you.
All right, thank you, Melissa. And there's a lot to watch in Arkansas, and especially nationally. And I'm just taking a look at the national numbers, which when we get back to CBS, we'll see it. But it's interesting how Arkansas is kind of a microcosm of what we're seeing nationally, in that cities and urban areas tend to be blue, and once you get outside the urban areas, it turns red.
That's right. Yeah, it's a trend that holds across the country, and it's an interesting way to think about Texas. You know, right now Texas is one of those states that's sort of on the cusp of becoming a blue state, perhaps because it's becoming more heavily urbanized. There are big cities in Texas, and you think about the Houston metro and the Dallas-Fort Worth metro and those places like that. Those are havens for Democratic votes, and so you see that in Arkansas as well, in places like Little Rock and in Fayetteville, and in those areas.
And we're live streaming on THV11.com and also live on YouTube if you want to join us there. In the meantime, we go back to CBS News to see what's happening nationally. Central. We took a break to go to our cut-in live on the air, but here we are on YouTube Live as well as THV11.com, our live stream. Craig O'Neill joined by Arkansas Business's Lance Turner. We got one story. In my opinion, we got one story.
Yeah.
Second Congressional District.
That's right.
French Hill versus Joyce Elliott.
That's right, yeah, and right now about 2,000 votes separate the two. We've got a lot more of the vote to come in, but it's shaping up to be just about as tight as we thought it would be. In all the polling that we've seen, internal campaign polls and other polls have all pointed to just a down-to-the-wire race for that second district seat.
Interesting, too, that for Joyce Elliott, she really had a lot of TV advertising.
That's right. Yeah, both of them did. Both of them pretty well financed. They were both able to raise a fair amount of money. Joyce Elliott holding her own in the fundraising game. Also had some outside help as well. Some outside interest groups funding some ads of their own. The Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee also putting some money into the race. This was a race that's on the national radar. You know, it would be a nice thing to flip that seat back to the Democrats, something that hasn't happened in a long time, and so they've invested a little money in that as well.
I read this morning in the paper that Joyce Elliott had outraised with donations French Hill in the last 2 weeks, so that's interesting. Makes you wonder if she loses tonight, is she going to stay with, this is her second try at this second congressional district. Will she stay with it? We'll talk about that later. Here I go again, looking too far ahead.
Down the road.
We've got tonight to determine, and we've got Marlisa Goldsmith waiting patiently, as well as Dawn Scott, for Lance and me to quit talking. Marlisa.
Well, Greg, we're going to try this again. You all know that typically on election night, we bring experts in and out of the THV11 newsrooms to kind of verify facts with them, go over how the polls are looking and how the results are shaping out to be. But due to COVID-19 guidelines and restrictions, we've been forced to get a little creative, which is why we're turning to Zoom for our very first interview tonight, where we are welcoming Susan Inman, an Arkansas election expert. Good evening to you, Susan.
Good evening. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for rolling with the punches with us here at THV11 and joining us this evening. You know, I've spoken with you throughout this election process, and we want to speak with you tonight about all things elections. If you will begin by telling us a little bit about how this process will work.
How the process works as far as gathering the results and reporting the information, stuff like that?
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, it takes a long time to get the numbers in, and I know we're all excited to see these early numbers as they come in, but there's a lot more votes out there that have yet to be counted. And even in Pulaski, there are more absentee ballots that they will count perhaps later today or even tomorrow. But the bulk of the absentee ballots in Pulaski County will have been counted, I think, I was told by about 9 o'clock tonight. So it's, you know, early and absentee results typically tell the tale of how the election is going to roll. But, you know, we're always up for surprises as the actual election day polls come in.
Isn't that the truth? Now, you mentioned 9 o'clock. That's just about, I'm looking at the clock here, about 27 minutes away from where we are right now. This year has shaped up to be a little bit different when it comes to the mail-in ballots. I know in comparing to years past, particularly the 2016 election, we got a lot more mail-in ballots this year due to the global pandemic. So how long could that take now with that being factored into the 2020 election?
Well, the election commissions have been working diligently to do the canvass, which is the most tedious part of absentee balloting, and that's opening the envelopes and comparing the voter statement with the application. But the actual running of the ballots is through a tabulator, so it's fairly quick. And I mean, for instance, Pulaski County has already run almost 20,000 ballots through their reader tonight.
Wow.
Today, they started today at like around noon, running them through the machine. So that's why I say, you know, those numbers will be coming, or why they have come quickly actually, because they've got the tabulation machine to take care of that.
Earlier this evening, you and I were discussing about the feel of the atmosphere for all voters across the country. Here in Arkansas, a lot of people are anxious, and we try to stay on our toes in everything that we do. But is there anything that could catch us off guard tonight? Should there be anything that we are on the lookout for?
Well, you know, Arkansas is a small state compared to some of the bigger ones that sort of fit into this big puzzle. So, you know, we shouldn't have too many problems. I don't anticipate that. Most of the returns will be in. There'll be provisional ballots that will be yet to be tabulated. And then we have overseas citizens and overseas service personnel ballots who are still yet to be received that will be added into the totals when they do come in. So the numbers are going to change. I don't know how significantly, but they could change. And then in other states that are still having difficulties counting, and if voters are in line at the polls, they'll all be allowed to cast a ballot if they were in line when the polls closed. So we'll see. I mean, I don't know. I'm kind of on pins and needles myself as to what the actual outcome will be nationally.
Got it. Well, Susan Inman, thank you so much for joining us. I don't want you to go anywhere because we probably will be checking back in with you throughout the night. So thank you so much for joining us here for this interview. We have many more experts lined up to speak with this evening. But for now, I want to send things over to Dawn Scott, who's monitoring the main 3 issues on the ballot. Dawn.
And we are tracking those 3 issues tonight, including one that has so many Arkansans really watching this closely. Issue number 1, it's all about the highway sales and use tax. Voters are deciding whether or not to continue the 0.5% sales tax, which is used for state infrastructure projects. Basically, this money goes toward highways, bridges, county roads, and city streets. The existing sales tax is set to expire in June 2023, and supporters say it's a long-term solution to address funding. Now, Mercedes McKay is watching this. She's been looking into these issues all throughout this day, and she joins us now with more on what she knows right now.
Hey, Dawn, I'm actually looking at our numbers right now, and the issue number 1 that you were just talking about, right now there's 54% are for and 46% that are against. Now, like you said, that is just a continuation of our current sales tax, which is 0.5%, which will go towards state infrastructure projects. Now, earlier today, I caught up with supporters and opponents. The supporters told me that they believe this is the only long-term solution for highway funding, whereas opponents say that they don't think a sales tax should be put into our Constitution and we need more time. Listen to what they had to say.
On a statewide level, you know, we have all sorts of needs with regard to I-30 and 412 and 67, 167 and major thoroughfares.
This tax does not expire until 2023. We have the opportunity to come up with a better plan that's more in line with, say, use taxes.
I have been in contact with both and Ryan, and both of them told me, looking at that 54 versus 46%, they are still remaining optimistic right now as they watch. Now, there are 2 other issues we are watching closely. Issue number 2 would change how term limits work in the state legislature. Right now, for is at 55% and against is at 45%. Now, if the majority vote for the issue, it would let lawmakers stay in office a total of 24 years instead of 16, but they would have to take a 4-year break in the middle of it, and a majority vote against would keep the current limits in place. Now, issue number 3 right now, we have 57% that are against it and 43% that are for it. Now, issue number 3 would put stricter requirements in place for ballot issues. A majority vote for means signatures would have to be collected earlier in the year, and they would need signatures from 45 counties instead of just that 15. Now, a majority vote against keeps the current process for voter-initiated laws and amendments. Just like you said, Dawn, I'll be tracking these all night. I'll send it back to you all in the studio.
Well, you put term limits on a ballot, people are going to go for it in Arkansas. They want to limit the power that a legislator can amass.
That's right. But this would actually extend the time that a legislator could serve. And I think there's been some discussion as to, is the ballot title itself on this one issue clear enough for voters to understand really what's happening? I've heard just anecdotally some voters walked away from the voting booth thinking that they were limiting terms even more, when in fact they are eliminating a lifetime term limit for legislators, and they're also they're cutting the amount of time a legislator can serve from 16 to 12 years. But you also have more time that you can serve,
Right.
spread out over time. You can have a 4-year layoff in between, and so. There's been some question as to whether people really understand this particular ballot issue, because it's quite complicated.
And yes, and if that one passes, it's going to rearrange terms.
That's right.
In the legislature, so it's going to take some more explaining. I mean, we've got the issue
Not the current
tonight
ones now,
right
but
on the
ones-
ballot, and then the legislature is going to get more complicated because of it. If it stays the way it is when our legislative sessions begin.
That's right.
Any surprises tonight for you?
None so far. I mean, everything's kind of going, I think, the way that we thought it could.
Susan Inman implied that the Joyce Elliott French Hill race is not over yet.
No.
You had the sense listening to her that she's watching that race continue to unfold because of ballots that have been mailed in. And we've seen in polling that the mail-in ballots favor Democrats.
That's right. Yeah. So that's what we're seeing getting played out in more pronounced areas in other parts of the country, right? Like Pennsylvania has some laws that mean that it's going to be counting ballots for a lot longer, maybe in the next couple of days, because of how they treat those absentee and mail-in ballots. And so that's playing out here in Arkansas, but on a little bit of a smaller scale. But yeah, there's definitely going to be a timeline for getting all of those counted, and it could stretch things out a little later than maybe what we're used to.
Should I tell everybody what I said to you before we came back? I turned to Lance and said, we'll be home by 10:30.
Oh, yes, yeah,
after
that's right.
10:30,
That's right.
we're going home. Now I'm not so sure after
Second
listening
district, I
to
don't
Susan
know.
Inman.
Yeah. Right.
Hey, we've got, we talk about these big, broad races. We've got a mayoral race in North Little Rock
We do.
that is as dramatic as any of them. And look at Tracy Steele with an early lead.
Yeah.
Only 2,000 votes in that city, or close to 3,000 now, but he's still got an early lead over Terry Hartwick, who's trying to take that job back.
This is one we thought could be a candidate for a runoff, but right now Tracy Steele with 47% of that vote. Tracy Steele, a known quantity, a known name in North Little Rock and Central Arkansas, in fact, in roles in the state government, in the Arkansas Senate, Arkansas House. Terry Hartwick, too, a former North Little Rock mayor, who's most recently served as director of city parks.
And with the floods last year, he was prominent on our newscast. He was on all the time talking about the flood damage, and decided to try to, after Joe Smith announced his retirement from the mayoral position in North Little Rock, Terry Hartwick decided to try and step in there.
Yeah.
And that's another one that could keep us later than, no, I'm just kidding.
We may be here later than you'd like, Craig. I don't know. Yeah. But
I
that's part
jinxed
of the
it
deal.
when I turned to Lane and said, we'll be home by 11 o'clock.
That's right. Never say never. Never talk that way.
No. Marlisa, I'm told in the booth to go to Marlisa, who has something real important she'd like to tell you right now.
Craig, as we continue to watch the presidential race, we want to take a closer look at the questions we've received about the Electoral College and the role it plays on Election Day. Our Verify team has been working hard to answer those questions for you. Here's Jason Puckett.
Viewer Lois A. asked, if the Electoral College determines the president, why do we even vote? Why is the popular vote so important? Well, we're answering Lois' question and breaking down the basics of the Electoral College, using a variety of sources, including reports by the Congressional Research Service, U.S. codes, the U.S. Constitution, and Supreme Court rulings. So, if the Electoral College determines the president, why do we vote? Well, a recent Supreme Court ruling sums it up well. Quote, when Americans cast ballots for presidential candidates, their votes actually go towards selecting members of the Electoral College. And that happens in 4 steps. First, during the campaign, both parties put together a list of elector nominees in each state. These can basically be anyone who's not currently in a federal office. Step 2, we vote. As the Supreme Court explained, we're actually voting for the electors that were nominated by the party we vote for. So if you vote Biden-Harris, you're actually voting for the Democratic electors, and if you vote Trump-Pence, you're voting for the Republican electors. Step 3, the vote is counted and electors are chosen. Now, U.S. Code says this has to be done by December 8th. In 48 states, it's winner take all. So if a party gets 51% of the popular vote, all the electors in that state will be from that party. Maine and Nebraska are the exceptions. They split their electoral votes. Finally, step 4. Electors officially vote for the candidates of their party to be president and vice president. This actually happens on December 14th, more than a month after we all vote. Electors are supposed to follow the popular vote of their state, and 33 states require it by law. So to answer Lois' question, why do we vote? Well, our votes decide who is in the Electoral College, and the Electoral College votes to decide who wins the election. Now, this system does mean that a candidate can win the national popular vote and lose the overall election, like in 2016 when Hillary Clinton had roughly 3 million more votes than Donald Trump, but Trump won 304 electoral votes. Only 270 are needed to be elected. Folks, if you've got other questions about the election you want us to look into, send us an email. With your Verify, I'm Jason Puckett.
Well, it depends on who you look at, but right now, Joe Biden has a lead over President Trump.
In the Electoral College, in terms of
still
states
early.
that are out there now, right?
270 is the number you want to look at. Democrats would like to see the Electoral College go away because they've won so many popular votes. Republicans would like for it to stay. Interesting development, 12 state legislatures in the United States have voted to say that whatever the popular vote is nationwide, that's how they'll devote. That's who they will devote their state electors to. In other words, they have voted to say that our state totals will not determine who the electoral representative is, which candidate will get electoral votes. You following me on this?
Yeah.
I hope I'm not making this too complicated. If you see that play out, if enough legislatures vote that way, it would do away with the Electoral College.
Right.
But right now, that's only 12 states.
That's right. Yeah.
I hope I made sense.
Yeah.
Did I make sense? Okay.
Of course.
Lance is endorsing it.
Crystal clear.
But it depends on who you're watching. CBS right now has got Biden with a slight lead over the president.
This is based on called states and also states that are the totals that are coming in. So it's a mixture of called states and just how the vote is trending so far. But obviously, as the night goes on, we'll get more called states and we'll be able to firm up those totals.
Let's see, what was it? President Trump had 306 and Hillary had 232, I believe. I'm doing that from memory, and remember, I'm 70 years old, and I've had a lot of stuff to remember.
I've had it here in my numbers.
Well,
it's all buried
I'm
in here.
Pretty close, I'm sure.
306 to 232.
Thank you.
But again,
Thank you.
Hillary Clinton won that popular vote, 48% to Trump's 45.9%, and that's the source of the angst over the Electoral College versus the popular vote question, is because the popular vote has tended to favor Democrats more than Republicans in a few recent cycles, and so that's where all that questioning is going.
All the questioning is going. So many different races to look at, and do we want to go with numbers of 2nd Congressional District up in the booth? JD? All right, JD just told me to give it a second, so seconds up. Just kidding.
You got it, just one, and you're done. That's probably still very close. The last time I checked it on the state Secretary of State's office, it was close.
Here we go. We're going to get it up, and we'll show you. French Hill now has a 4 percentage point lead.
44% reporting.
Still too early to call, though. They wouldn't call it nationally if they saw that. So we still got a ways to go.
That's right. Yeah.
We'll be home by 11 o'clock. Folks, we'll have an over-under. You can watch this on YouTube or our streaming. All right, let's see if Craig and Lance get home by 11 o'clock.
Are they still there? That's right.
Are we ready with Marlisa? Oh, okay, Marlisa, who we got?
Yeah, Craig, we're now bringing in our second expert for the evening, who is Professor Chris Williams. He's a professor at the University of Arkansas at Little Rock. Good evening to you, Professor Williams.
Good evening. How are you?
Good. Thanks so much for joining us here on THV 11's Election Central tonight. Now, a month ago, you all may or may not have caught the story here on THV 11. If you didn't, shame on you, because it was a really good story. But we spoke a lot about the importance and the significance of the black vote, particularly in this election. If you will, for folks at home who did not get a chance to catch that story, talk a little bit about the significance and how it's really evolved over the years.
Well, in this current race, this black vote, particularly in the South, has been of utmost importance, right? In the southern states, as the white population has become more and more conservative and more Republican, which we saw this kind of flip really in the late 1960s, early 1970s, it became very clear that the Democrats weren't going to be able to compete in the South without massive black turnout. And in recent years, we've seen that black voters have really been able to drive, particularly in the South, Democratic wins. For example, Barack Obama winning in North Carolina in 2008. And currently, for our current race here in the Arkansas 2nd District, a huge portion of the outcome of that race is also going to be predicated on black turnout.
Yeah, during the interview, we also touched on a little bit about the significance of events that have transpired over the course of 2020. I mean, for years, we've faced events similar to what has come about, but this year was a little different when we've been at home seeing events play out like the unfortunate killing of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and so many others that we could name. The list goes on and on. How did that play a part in, I guess, the motivation to get black voters out to voice their need or their desire for change in America?
Well, obviously, the civil rights violations that we've seen amongst, with regard to the black population in the United States, George Floyd and the numerous other killings that we've seen, Breonna Taylor, for example. This has created a new issue, or not a new issue, but an issue that is particularly important, particularly salient to the black community, and that's criminal justice reform, right? And this refers to both the police and how policing is done, but also the arrests of African-American and black voters. And this has become a very important issue, and one that the Democrats have honestly tried to take a position on that would drive black turnout and make them more competitive, particularly across states like North Carolina, Georgia, and Florida.
Got it. Well, Professor Williams, thank you so much for joining us. I don't want you to go anywhere because you are amongst several experts that we have on tap for tonight to check in periodically throughout this very important election night. Thank you so much for joining us. And you all at home, don't go anywhere because we're going to be right back with much more coverage.
Viewer Lois A. asked, if the Electoral College determines the president, why
And good evening. Welcome to Election Central. I'm Craig O'Neill, joined by Arkansas Business's Lance Turner.
And we have team coverage both here in the studio and across Central Arkansas, and the results are coming in.
We're going to show you French Hill right now with looking at victory over Joyce Elliott, but still too early, Lance.
44% of precincts reporting, and that one is one that we knew was going to be close, and it remains close at this hour.
It is the big story we've got going on. And moving along now, Marlisa Goldsmith and Dawn Scott will be answering any questions that pop up as our night goes on. They'll also be talking to experts as results roll in and checking in with our crews in the field. Marlisa, to you.
Thanks so much, Craig. Our crews are following the most talked about races here in Arkansas, including one that is gaining national attention tonight. Our own Ashley Godwin is following today's voter turnout. She's been watching as the absentee ballots have been counted all night long. Ashley, set the tone for us. What is it looking at now?
Marlisa, it's pretty empty at this point. Almost all of the volunteers have gone home, but that's because they're almost done. They have hit that 9 o'clock hour that we've been talking about, where we were for sure they were going to get done. And yes, they are getting done. They have their last box. They're just doing their final touches. And they told me everything went better than expected today. They had volunteers come in. They've been in here since about 8 this morning counting. The machine went well. So now all that's left is the ballots head to the commissioners, which will now, they will count the votes. Back to you in the studio.
All right, Ashley, thank you. One of the biggest races that we're watching tonight is the one for Arkansas's 2nd Congressional District. We showed you the numbers very close. Republican U.S. Representative French Hill faces off against Democratic challenger Joyce Elliott, and polls show it could be very, very close. Melissa Zigowitz has been following Elliott's campaign, but we check in first with THV 11's Rolly Hoyt following French Hill,
where they have been cautiously optimistic ever since the polls closed and even earlier throughout the day, as they had the model in mind of what it would take for French Hill to get the win. And so far the map is looking favorable for their candidate. Looking at it right now, there's a big blue spot right in the middle. That's Pulaski County. All of those votes, about 70% of them right now, 78,000 votes going to Joyce Elliott. But in Conway and in Saline County, those two big suburban counties, they are red, and they have French Hill with about a 4,000 vote lead right now. If that continues to roll that way in the other rural counties, it's going to be a big night for French Hill. But they still have their fingers crossed over at Joyce Elliott's headquarters. Melissa Zigowitz has the story there.
Yeah, hey, Rolly, we are very much in very different atmospheres right now, and that's because Senator Joyce Elliott decided not to have a campaign watch party here tonight because she did not want to put people at risk for COVID-19. Now, Senator Joyce Elliott was out all day talking to voters. I actually met up with her at a polling location out in North Little Rock, and she tells me she's very optimistic about tonight. This is actually her second time running for the 2nd Congressional District seat. She lost it back in 2010 with just 38% support. Now, we may be hearing from Joyce Elliott here tonight. We're still not sure. It just kind of depends on that outcome, but we are going to be standing out here all night until then here in downtown Little Rock at her headquarters. For now, we're going to send it back to you.
Got 3 congressional races, Lance. Let's do the math. If we have 2 minutes before we go back to CBS, that means we get to spend 20 seconds on each one of those. So let's start with District 2, the big one that we've been talking about. Give you the latest. Ooh, French Hill jumps up 1 more percentage point.
Yeah, that's going to remain close probably until the end of this as those outer counties come in. And those are the outer counties, of course, that French Hill is counting on because of her dominance in Pulaski County, particularly the Little Rock area.
French Hill, a former banker, so he's going to be good with math. He knows where he's got it. Tom Cotton in the Senate race with the Libertarian, Ricky Dale Harrington Jr. Big winner, 66-34. No surprise.
No surprise there. That's right. That's shaping up about like we figured it would.
And do we have time? Okay, here we go. Donald Trump in Arkansas was declared the winner within 4 minutes.
I think 1 second after 7:30, he was declared the winner. But yeah, 62%, I think, outperforming his 2016 already.
We're going to bringing you extensive team coverage on air and online in our Election Central live stream on THV11.com. You never know what's going to happen there, as well as on THV11's YouTube channel in just a moment. We now return to CBS News for special election coverage. I was looking at Ohio. CBS News has Ohio. They haven't declared a winner in Ohio for President Joe Biden with a very slight lead over President Trump of 0.3%. man,
It's,
oh man.
It's feeling like there's going to be a lot of those close places. Ohio and then also Florida. At last check, Florida was looking very close as well, as usual.
At one point in this election, and I may be painting too broad a brush, but you had the feeling that President Trump was not running against Joe Biden as much as he was against the coronavirus.
I think that's absolutely it, and I think we've seen some exit polling that has taken place today that is showing that the coronavirus is definitely among the top, if not the top issue for voters. And so naturally President Trump's performance in the face of the coronavirus and leading the country through this crisis, which continues, is definitely going to be a big part of how people vote today, or how they did vote today and in previous days.
And I saw an early graphic on CBS they had in their news that over 52% of Ohio voters did not think the coronavirus was a deciding point. All right, let's talk about State Senate District 1. Bart Hester, a perennial.
Yeah.
One of the reasons why the Republicans have such a big edge in both the Senate and the House. But Bart Hester, big leader and winner over Ronetta Francis.
That's right.
Senate District 12, you got...
Okay, so this is interesting. This is interesting. This is a chance for a Republican to flip a seat in District 12. Incumbent Bruce Mallock, who's very well liked among all of his constituents in the House and Senate. This has been a race we've been watching because of Charles Beckham. Apparently had some. I guess in high school, I'm trying to figure out the way to tell this story. But in high school, apparently wore KKK regalia to his high school at one time, and so that's caused some of his classmates to come forward and take out ads against him. And so that's going to be an interesting race to watch to see how that.
Apparently, it didn't impact him though, judging by what we saw.
Not so far, not from what we've seen so far.
This is with 70%. Alan Clark down in Hot Springs. Jim Hendren.
Jim Hendren, incumbent, looking fairly safe tonight, 42% of the vote in.
No surprise there. Actually, we have none of these surprises. Ben Gilmore, the
Another
Republican. Now this one is, Eddie Cheatham has been in the legislature as a Democrat from down in McGee. So this one is somewhat of a surprise.
Yeah, this is an upstart. This is a young man, Ben Gilmore, who's actually worked for Tim Griffin, and so starting his political career off with a strong lead tonight.
Well, look at this. We do have one State Senate District 27, Burrell and Garner. We've got a tight one there.
With 0.25% in, so this could be a race there, and that would be an interesting flip for Democrats.
Clark Tucker, who has a name now.
That's right.
And is showing it with a big lead over Bob Thomas, who got into the race after getting Republican backing and took on Clark Tucker. Jane English with trying to hold on to her seat. By the way, she probably wouldn't want me to say this. She's older than both Trump and Biden.
Oh, wow. Okay,
but she has still been a force in the state legislature at the tender age of 79.
Yes.
So she's showing that she's still got it.
That's right. Yeah,
with a lead over the younger upstart Democrat. So there you go.
Yep.
Lots of stories happening in our state legislature. Another thing that's happening is, and this is one of the things Teach V11 is going to be looking into, is the Little Rock School Board. Up for election tonight. That's buried way down ballot. However, when you consider this is the first time since when, Marlisa, 2015, that we've had a school board to vote on, this is something that in the next few days we're going to be taking a closer look at.
Yeah, right. And this is a key moment for returning local control to the
look at that. Our people in the booth, would you look at this? Zone 3, we got a real tight race. I mean, this is early. I'll look up there, 0% precinct, and but still, this is a very tight race. Michael Sanders, Monica Wiley, Evelyn Hemphill Callaway, and Tommy Branch Jr. just all right there in Zone 3. And Branch is leading by 133 votes, so that could definitely change. I believe we got the entire board up for election tonight. And this is one of the things that see Allie Nolan with a lead over Stuart Mackey Sr. but we're just at 1,000 votes, so this is Pulaski County, obviously, so Allie Nolan with a big lead to start.
Yeah, much more to come there.
And again, early, this is School Board Zone 6, and you're taking a look at what could be we might even see some runoffs, do you think?
It could be, yeah. We
If
could
we
see
don't
some
get
of those in some of those
50%.
more crowded zones, we absolutely could, yeah.
Norma Johnson with the lead over Ryan Davis in Zone 7, and Greg Adams winning handily early on over Benjamin Coleman, who's probably turning to his family right now and saying, it's early on, don't go by this.
That's right.
Jeff Wood is leading 58-42 over King Bang Ding, 58-42%. And I probably got the name wrong, but hey, you do it real fast.
That's right. Yeah, big night for Little Rock schools in the future of how all that shakes out, and a lot of forces at play in that race. You've got the Little Rock Teachers Union, Little Rock Education Association making a lot of endorsements in those races. They've got candidates they want to see on the board because they obviously feel a little disenfranchised with how things are currently operating with the Little Rock School District and want to have a greater say on that board. And then you've got some other interests involved. Some interests backed by the Walton family who are trying to do some things to remake how education works in Arkansas, or innovate, or however you'd like to put it. But they definitely are trying to make their positions known, and they've endorsed candidates as well. And so you've got some big forces at play at the Little Rock School District, and it'll be very interesting to see the makeup of that board. Will we have a mixture of those forces on the board, or will it swing to one side or the other? How will all that shake out?
The anti-teachers union people claim that by having the election the same night as the general election, that teachers unions, if you had them in an off year, teachers unions couldn't pack the voting booth like they could if it was an off year election. But by having them on the night of a general election, the teachers unions don't have as much power. That's not what I'm saying. That's what the anti-union forces are saying.
Right.
So that's an interesting point here as we look at the school board elections for the first time since 2015 in Pulaski County. Now let's go to Dawn.
All right, guys, such great analysis there. Thanks so much. You know, the race to count these votes will go on throughout the night. President Trump has said during an interview recently that a winner should be declared tonight, but is there a federal law that mandates that? Evan Kozlov with our Verified team looked into it.
The Verified team is here to sort through the political spin and get you the facts about the 2020 election. Like this comment from President Trump.
It would be very, very proper and very nice if a winner were declared on November 3rd instead of counting ballots for 2 weeks, which is totally inappropriate, and I don't believe that that's by our laws.
So let's verify. Do federal election laws mandate that we have our results by election night? Our sources are Gary Nordlinger, a politics professor at the George Washington University. This October report from the Congressional Research Service, Section 3 of the United States Code, and the 20th Amendment. Long story short, our expert says this is false. There's no law mandating that we must have the results on election night.
Absolutely not. It's by, frankly, network projections and candidates conceding.
You see, Nordlinger explains that the only constitutional requirement comes from the 20th Amendment, which says that a president must be inaugurated by January 20th. The rest of the deadlines come from federal law, namely
Title III United States Code.
That mandates that presidential electors must cast their ballots by the Monday after the second Wednesday in December. This year, that's December 14th. And Congress officially counts those votes by January 6th. And yet, in most election years, we know far earlier.
We've grown up in an age of technology where we have the mass communications, we have the computer simulations, we have the exit polling, all of which go into a pretty complex model that the Associated Press uses to declare the winners in each state.
But Nordlinger says that the actual final count might take a little longer this year. That's because of all the absentee ballots. Not to mention many states will count ballots that arrive after Election Day so long as they're postmarked by November 3rd. With your Verify, this is Evan Kozlov.
Okay, we're back on. I didn't think we were back on, but we're back on to tell you that Republican Nelda Speaks has won State House District 100 handily, 79-21 over Kevin Vornetter. Don Glover and Mark McElroy in a dead heat because, well, they haven't counted any votes yet. District 11. And where else can we go? I don't suppose you all have District 31 in Saline County close by, do you? David Tollett, 79-21 over Jimmy Wilson. And I'm just curious about District 31. You'll know when we get there, because I wouldn't be asking about it if I didn't have an interesting point to make. But I just think it's a here we go.
Come on, pins and needles over here.
Okay, Keith Brooks, the Republican, has a big lead over Mazil Rajendran. And the reason I wanted to talk about this one is how the spirit of politics can get to someone even if they've only been in the country for 15 years, which is the way it is for Mazil Rajendran, the Democrat, who came to this country, migrated here in 2001, is a software engineer, which means he came to this country because he was probably in demand, and now he has watched politics develop since becoming a naturalized citizen, and he ran for office. Right. So that's why we got it on. Now I understand we've got the governor.
Been involved in this party for too many decades, before many of you have actually got on the scene. We love what we see in this party in terms of the commitment to our free enterprise system, the commitment to a conservative judiciary, the commitment to less regulation and lower taxes. And we, in the last 5 years, have done that since I've been governor with the support of the General Assembly. We're grateful for that. Next year, is it not exciting? The next January, our individual income tax rate is going to go down to 5.9% in Arkansas. Whenever you look at the fact that our teachers doing such an incredible job, and we've raised teacher pay in Arkansas. We have done so much that we're increasing business. We love what we see in this state, and we love the potential for our future. Thank you for your support of us during this, but also for our incredible candidates. Tom Cotton, you know, he's had a great victory today, so appreciative of his leadership in the Senate. It's great to have him there for another 6 years. And so many opportunities coming ahead. I hope you enjoy tonight. We'll be watching the returns. God bless you. God bless America. Thank you.
And Governor Hutchinson, that's the longest he's spoken without showing a chart.
He just carries those easels around with him, doesn't he?
Normally he's showing a chart. He showed one today in his press conference, but he hitting all the right notes, congratulating the Republicans, while at the same time touching all the important touchstones that Republicans touch.
And probably still waiting for the final results on that issue 1, which is very important to him and his agenda in the final half of his tenure as governor.
It almost sounded like he was campaigning in a lot of ways for that. Do we have an interview now?
We do.
Marlisa, who we got?
We have Susan Inman back up. Susan is back. You all have been very fluid with us tonight, checking in with our experts throughout the night. The last time we talked with Susan, we spoke a little bit about the general process and how this night could be shaping up. Tonight, or excuse me, now at this moment, we want to speak a little bit about the absentee ballot. Susan, this has been a huge topic. It's brought up a lot of anxiety and angst for people this year because of the way that the year has shaped up. A lot of people decided to do mail-in ballots as opposed to going in person, which a lot of people typically do. So when it comes to these absentee ballots, what is it looking like now?
Well, we had a record number of absentee ballots in the state of Arkansas, and especially in Pulaski County. I voted absentee, but I've voted absentee the last couple of elections anyway. And it really is harder to vote absentee than it is to vote in person, because you have to fill out a request document, and then when the ballot comes to your home, you have to fill out a voter statement and submit a copy of your photo ID. So there's a lot of requirements the voter has to fulfill to get their absentee ballot counted, to make sure it's submitted properly and it's all verified. But I did see something on I think your news site or another news site that said Pulaski County had thrown out 4,000 ballots, absentee ballots. Well, I don't think that's correct. I think those are just going to have to be reviewed and counted later. They've just not been counted yet. So that's this period of time it takes to verify the information, and oftentimes the tabulator itself will eat the ballot, which requires the ballot to be recreated, reformatted, remarked, so it can go through the scanner. So there's a lot of stuff involved in the background and making sure all of the valid ballots are counted.
Right. And mentioning the bad voting ballots that have been submitted, I just got word from one of our photojournalists, Steve Payne here. He sent in a picture to our newsroom to let us know that the Election Commission is right now in the process of going through what could be potentially those bad voter ballots right now. So again, this is a process. This is a very fluid process, and we are here with you all along with the process to make sure that we are staying on top of how the votes are being counted, making sure that we check in with the Election Commission. And I actually did a Verify segment with them a few weeks ago, Susan, where we broke down the top 3 reasons for why a voter ballot would be thrown out. And one of the top reasons was people not including their photo ID. And another reason was forgetting to sign on the ballot.
Yeah, and if a voter mismarks or accidentally puts the date of the signing as instead of the date of birth, it won't be counted. But in Arkansas, if the voter submits an absentee ballot and everything is proper and neglected to submit the photo ID and didn't sign an optional verification portion of the voter statement, they will be notified that they have an opportunity to get that photo ID back to the Election Commission or the county clerk so that their ballot can be counted. It's kind of a tricky timeline to get that information to the voter and the voter to get it back to the authorities. But that is a remedy for that one instance when an absentee voter neglects to submit their photo ID. They will be given an opportunity to submit that so it can be counted.
Good to know. Good information to know. Thank you so much, Susan Inman, one of our very own election experts that we have on tap here tonight to check in with periodically throughout this very important election night. Thank you so much, Susan. We'll be checking back in with you momentarily. Now I'll send things over to Dawn Scott.
All right, and we're checking in on the issues that you voted on today, beginning with issue 1. Let's take a look at some of the results that are coming in. This is the highway tax. So issue 1 asked voters to approve making a temporary half-cent highway sales and use tax a permanent part of the state constitution. Okay, 55% so far say that they are for this tax. 45% say they're against it, and this is with 43% of the precincts reporting of the vote coming in. Now, this is the issue 2, the term limits, also 55% to 45%. Issue 2 would change how term limits work in the state legislature, allowing lawmakers to stay in office for 24 years instead of 16, with that 4-year break in between. And on to the next issue. Issue number 3, if we have it, we can show you the results there. Issue 3 would put stricter requirements in place for ballot issues. A majority vote for means that signatures would have to be collected earlier in the year, and they would need signatures from 45 counties instead of just 15. So 56% of voters in Arkansas are against this right now. 44% are for it, and that is again with 42% of the precincts reporting. And I believe there's just one more issue that we can check in on. If it's issue 6 is what I believe it is. It was thrown off the ballot, I know, so we're not going to be showing those results tonight. But I know that Craig and Lance are weighing in on these issues as well. I don't know, are these results surprising to you all?
I think they are sort of in range with what we had seen reflected in some polling. The University of Arkansas's Arkansas poll in particular showed big support for issues, or decisive support for issues 1 and 2. In issue 3, opposition, pronounced opposition. And
that came from the legislature, the Republican-controlled legislature, who had to be riled over the fact that medicinal marijuana had gotten on the ballot and had been accepted by Arkansans, had been riled by the fact that casinos had been voted on and gotten on the ballot once again, and the Republican-controlled legislature looked at that and went, you know what? We're going to change the rules about how we get these issues on the ballot.
That's right.
And I told Lance before we started tonight, this is the David Couch issue, because David Couch was the instigator of getting all those issues on the ballot that the Republican-controlled legislature just went, oh my gosh.
Well, you were looking
I can't believe that Arkansans passed those things,
right.
but
Well,
they
it's like
did.
Don alluded to just a moment ago. You were looking at several others that were going to make the ballot, that had been put on the ballot, but then were subsequently challenged in court and thrown off. But you had a lot of those David Couch had been behind in terms of remaking how we redistrict in Arkansas, how we apportion legislators and populations that they represent, and all of that. Big issues, with a lot riding on them in terms of how our government is made and who represents us and how they do so. And so issue 3 is very important, and it would change, raising the bar, making it harder to get those questions on the ballot.
But it looks like the legislature, through all that effort, is going to take it on the chin again.
Well, at least in terms of issue 3.
If the voting holds.
Right, at least in terms of issue 3, which is a complex issue as well, and I think that might have played a big part in some voters' hesitancy to support it, because the ballot title is a little intimidating. It amends like 3 parts of the state constitution. It does a lot of things to do what it needs to do, and sometimes people just see that and it's too complex and they don't want to fool with it, and so they move on.
Well, we went to a lot of trouble to come up with a presidential race graphic for the state of Arkansas. So if we went to all that trouble, by golly, we're going to show it.
We're going to show it. Yeah, and there it is.
Donald Trump's the winner. And you knew that probably 3 weeks ago.
Congratulations to the graphics department on a wonderful job there.
If you've traveled out and about like Nathan Scott has, I know, I see him sitting over there in the Weather Center, you see the Trump signs, and you couldn't go out on a lake or a river without seeing boats with a Donald Trump parade. So it was very evident. He had a lot of enthusiasm in this state.
And it'll be interesting to see just in terms of how Joe Biden finishes the night here in Arkansas, because Hillary Clinton finished in Arkansas with about 34% of the vote, and he's at about 35% of the vote. So it's pretty in line with Hillary's performance in 2016. But Trump is actually improving upon his performance in 2016. He finished up in 2016 with 61% of the vote, and tonight he's trending towards 63% of the vote.
It'll be interesting to see how Joe Biden does in Pulaski County. I bet he carries Pulaski County.
Yeah, we'll have to look at those. We'll have to pull those up here in a moment and see how that's going.
Donald Trump carries the rest of the state. So we've just kind of been an opening act once again as it's really starting to get toward crunch time nationally. And that's our cue to go back to CBS for national results. Thank you for watching THV11. We're going to be live on YouTube and our live stream on THV11.com. Good evening and welcome to Election Central. I'm Craig O'Neill, joined by Arkansas Business's Lance Turner. And Lance, what a night.
That's right. Yeah, we've got team coverage both here in the studio and across Central Arkansas, and the results are coming in.
You want some? We got them. Tom Cotton, a winner over Ricky Dale Harrington Jr., the Libertarian, 67-33. Ricky Dale Harrington Jr.'s first race, and he gets beaten by Tom Cotton, but he's not alone.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, Tom Cotton with a commanding presence there, just as we knew that he would probably have.
Marlisa Goldsmith and Dawn Scott are both here. They've been talking to experts, watching these results roll in like you have. And Marlisa, we'll start with you.
Yeah, Craig, our crews are following the most talked about races here in Arkansas, including that congressional race with Representative French Hill and Joyce Elliott. But we start with our own Ashley Godwin, who's actually been watching some of the ballots be counted this evening. Ashley, what's it looking like now?
Marlisa, I'm in the last step of those absentee ballots being counted. So in the previous room, they were counting the inner envelope. They were making sure all the information in that inner envelope, because there were two envelopes. So this was the last step to count to make sure these ballots were able to go through. So if they were deemed there was something wrong with them, the last step is here with the election commissioner. So what they're doing is they're checking those questionable ballots and they're saying, okay, can we, are these good to go? Can they be counted or can they not? And if they cannot, then they're thrown out. So they have about 4,500 ballots right now that they're going through. And they said they'll be here until tomorrow, which they wouldn't give me an exact time. They just said they'll be here until they're done. So they have quite a bit of work to do tonight. They'll be here all night. But I'll send it back to you guys in the studio.
Ashley Godwin, thank you so much. And one of the biggest races that we're watching right now is the one for Arkansas's 2nd Congressional District. Republican U.S. Representative French Hill faces off against Democratic challenger Joyce Elliott. Polls showing it very, very close right now. Melissa Zigowitz has been following Elliott's campaign tonight. But first, we want to check in with THV 11's Rolly Hoyt. He is following French Hill.
John, the party that they've got here for the GOP at the Embassy Suites, they've been listening to those numbers and also keeping an ear to what Ashley was talking about with those absentee ballots getting counted up in Pulaski County. They're running out of votes, at least at the Elliott campaign, to come up and catch Representative Hill right at this point. We've got a new batch of results in from Perry County, nowhere near as many votes as you would have in a place like Little Rock, but they continue to show about a 70-30 split in favor of Congressman Hill, a good sign as he continues on into the evening with a several percentage point lead. Melissa Zigowitz has more on how the reaction's going across town.
Yeah, hey, really, we are very much at different types of atmospheres, and that's because I am set up just outside Senator Joyce Elliott's campaign headquarters here in downtown Little Rock. She's not having a party because of the pandemic, but I did just hear from her campaign manager, and although this race is still too close to call yet, he did give me a statement saying it's exciting to see democracy in action, but it's still too early to call this race, and we need to give it time. Now, I met up with Senator Joyce Elliott earlier today at a polling location, and she tells me she's very optimistic about tonight, and they're not going to be doing any celebrating until every vote is counted. For now, I'm going to send it back to you.
All right, Melissa. Control room just came to us and said, what race do you all want to talk about? And we're just listening to Melissa, waiting for Joyce Elliott to show up. I'm not real sure she will.
Yeah, I think she's playing it pretty safe, obviously, and waiting to see what the full results will be. But this race has really turned out to be just kind of what we thought it would be, very close. But also, really illustrates the challenge that she's faced from the get-go is trying to find a way in to those outside counties, those counties outside Pulaski County. And when you're staring down 70-30 margins in Saline County and Perry County, and in places like, we don't know what the margins are in Conway and Faulkner lately, but we do know that she faces an uphill climb in those areas, and that's the problem as a Democrat trying to compete in the 2nd District, is you've got Little Rock pretty well locked down, but once you get outside there, it's tough.
Proof again, Arkansas is a rural state. We're live on YouTube, and you can live stream it, watch our live stream at thv11.com. In the meantime, we go back to CBS. Election Central, thank you for joining us here on YouTube live stream on THV11.com. How do we look on the computer? Better yet, how does Joe Biden look? How does President Trump look on the computer?
Yeah.
Or with the numbers? That's my subtle way of saying let's check the results for president. And in Arkansas, it was pretty much a given 3 weeks ago. That race was called within 4 minutes. I wonder what the record is for the soonest a race is called after the polls close.
That's a good question.
I would imagine Arkansas would be pretty close to that record.
I would think so. Yeah, this was pretty decisive. Donald Trump with 62% of the votes so far, Joe Biden 36%, and the others following behind distantly. Donald Trump, the projected winner of Arkansas. No surprise that Trump captured Arkansas' 6 electoral votes, just as he did in 2016, fairly decisively over Hillary Clinton by about a 61-34 margin in that race, and he looks to be improving on his 2016 margin this year here in Arkansas. Just Arkansas deeper red and a little more support for the president.
COVID numbers had no impact in Arkansas on the Trump popularity.
That's
anyway.
right. That's right. Yeah, didn't seem to figure. You know, Arkansans have been all in on Trump. You know, since the primaries, I think in some respects, the primaries of 2016, even. I mean, I think you know there was some establishment moves towards some other candidates. I think like Marco Rubio and some of those others, but pretty quickly Arkansas was able to coalesce around Trump, and they've never left. I mean, they've been pretty happy with what they've been getting.
Control room messaged me that we are now going to look at other congressional races besides District 2 in Arkansas, which means we'll start with Steve Womack up in Northwest Arkansas, and he's in District 3, leading Republican on the House Budget Committee, and it looks like he's going to stay that way. By the way, he went to Arkansas Tech.
Fantastic.
Did you know that? Did you know that?
Did not
Arkansas
know that.
Tech. In fact, he is in the Arkansas Tech University Hall of Fame, and that has nothing to do with these numbers. I'm just trying to give you a little side note because, quite frankly, that's a blowout, ladies and gentlemen. So is this. District 4, Bruce Westerman, William Bobby Hanson, and Frank Gilbert, the Libertarian. And once again, we have another blowout, Bruce Westerman, who lives in Hot Springs and has kept his seat. I believe this is his second attempt at re-election.
Well, he's been. That's right. Yeah, he's been in the House since 2014, and so the only forester in the House, and has been doing a lot of work around forestry and is it the trillion trees or the
he introduced
trees?
the bill for the trillion trees, was designed to fight climate change. Although when President Trump and Bruce Westerman introduced it, they never used the phrase climate change.
Right.
In the Democrat-controlled House of Representatives, if they'd gone there, chances are they would have had a bill passed by now, but they don't. But still, it's an interesting. It's interesting in semantics.
That's right.
When it comes to passing bills.
Yep.
Our semantics tell us to go over to Dawn right now.
Yes, and we have been following these issues, issue 1, 2, and 3, regarding the highway tax, also term limits, and much more. And THV 11's Mercedes McKay is tracking the results tonight and explaining what exactly these results mean.
Hey, Dawn, just like you said, I'm tracking all the results for these 3 issues. Now, for issue number 1 right now, we have 55% for and 45% against. And like you said, issue number 1 is all about the highway sales and use tax. Voters are deciding whether or not to continue the 1.5% sales tax, which is used for state infrastructure projects. Basically, this is money that goes towards highways, bridges, county roads, and city streets, and that existing sales tax is set to expire in June of 2023. Now let's go on to issue number 2, the Arkansas term limits. 4 is at 55% right now, and we have 45% that are against. Now, what issue 2 would change is how term limits work in the state legislature. If the majority votes for the issue, it would let lawmakers stay in an office a total of 24 years instead of that 16. But they would have to take a 4-year break in the middle of it, and a majority vote against would keep the current limits in place. Now on to issue 3, which is the initiative process and legislative referral requirements. Right now we have 44% for and 56% against. Now issue 3 would put strict requirements in place for ballot issues. A majority vote for means signatures would have to be collected earlier in the year, and they would need signatures from 45 counties instead of just that 15. Now, a majority vote against keeps the current process for voter-initiated laws and amendments. That's it for now. I'll keep tracking these results and send it back to you.
Oh, judging by that, you can watch for more, shall we say, grassroots efforts to get on ballots.
Yeah, the current method will likely stay as it has been, and we could probably continue to see more runs at the ballot for issues like how we redistrict here in Arkansas. We could see that come up again, and we could also see issues around recreational marijuana. I think that's one that could come up.
Real quick, we're keeping the sales tax for the highway department, and you know everybody at the highway department right now is going, all that revenue, and we can't use it on the I-30 project. Whoa.
That's a tough pill to swallow, and when the department reacted to that, there were a lot of words in that statement, but the bottom line was we got to find another place to find the money to fund I-30, and then there's also the question of the money they've already spent from that sales tax. Does that get paid back? There's a lot of questions around all of that now that have to be determined.
Torn up half of the Clinton Park down there below the bridge.
I mean, they've started work, and they're going to do it one way or the other, it seems like, but how they're going to do it is a big question.
So we've got that tax, but what's going to happen to it? Who knows? That's one of the stories that's going to come out of this election. As for the U.S. Senate race, Tom Cotton was a huge winner over Ricky Dale Harrington Jr. tonight, 66-34. Tom Cotton, who of course was a graduate of Dardanelle High School and was in the 101st Airborne. He was also a part of the Old Guard at Arlington National Cemetery, one of those you see in ceremonies when he was younger. That was one of his duties. He has 2 sons, and not many people know this, but he is addicted to birthday cake. The kind you buy in a bakery.
Yeah, I think
and
he eats
has
one a
been
day.
known to take birthday cake from the family, cut squares and put it in the freezer and eat it for breakfast. You'd never know looking at him, but there you go.
Yeah, and you know, this is a good win for him in terms of how he's looking toward 2024. And
now you're looking ahead.
Yeah, well, I know I shouldn't be, but I think that's something that we should point out is that, you know, instead of campaigning in Arkansas in a closely fought Senate race, he's had the luxury of being able to go across the country and campaign for other people in their close races, and that's what he's been spending his time doing instead of having to campaign here. And then all the while he's doing that, he's doing it in places like New Hampshire. He's doing it in places like Iowa.
Gee, what a coincidence.
Exactly. Those early influential places in a presidential race where he can continue to sort of lay the groundwork for that. So he's really made no secret of the fact that that's what he's thinking about. And we'll just have to see. You know, a lot's going to depend on what happens tonight with the presidential election, obviously, but you know, how he spends the next few several months and getting ready for 2024.
I know what you people are saying. Craig, Lance, are there any close races in Arkansas? May have one for you. Let's check the North Little Rock mayor's race. No, they're not.
Not so far. No, Tracy Steele looks like he's headed toward a victory there.
Well, it's still early. No, it isn't.
93%
My bad. No, wait.
Precincts
I
reporting.
back off.
Yeah.
Looks like Tracy Steele is going to be. Now, does he have to get? I believe though.
No, he had to clear 40% to avoid a runoff.
Oh, okay.
And he's done that. So
get ready to say Mayor Steele.
That could be something happening there in North Little Rock. So.
And City Board, we want to take a look at the City Board, position 8. Dean Compuris retains his seat, which means more sculptures for the downtown sculpture garden. That's one of his projects, pet projects, and he has a right to be proud of it. It is incredible if you've ever seen that sculpture garden down there at the riverfront.
And there's some new blood looks like set to happen
Phillips.
there on the Little Rock City Board. Antoine Phillips, of course, 40% of that vote. Still a little bit of vote out left on that.
Who is also an artist, and this was his first race. Joan Adcock keeps her seat. She's big with the Amarillo Village. That's one of her pet projects, and she was one of the instigators that got that built.
Right. Surviving 2 challengers there, no less. So.
And still made it. She's back. So we're getting a lot of familiar faces back for those Tuesday night city board meetings on cable.
That we all like to watch on the Zooms. That's right, yeah.
Okay. what are we going to, now what are we going to do? You've got a computer, and here we are with an election night, and we've gone over a lot, and we have more to go over. Coming up, we've got news at 10 o'clock. We'll be glad to update you on everything then as the numbers continue to pour in. It sounds like we're going to leave you now, but we're not. Where else do we want to go, control room? All right, we're going to show you. Okay, we're going to show you some results.
Okay.
And only if you promise to watch us at 10. Promise. Okay. Watch us on air at 10 and we'll show you results if you're a good computer viewer. You know, something tells me this may be the last time they ever do this at THP.
Oh, come on.
Tom Cotton?
tonight a smashing victory.
They just got their last box of absentee ballots.
Tonight, all eyes are once again on Florida.
The numbers are going to change.
The black vote, particularly in the South, has been of utmost importance, right?
This could be a very close race.
Thank you for joining us on Election Night 2020. I'm Craig O'Neill alongside Arkansas Business's Lance Turner, and we've got a full socially distanced house tonight. Marlisa Goldsmith and Dawn Scott are standing by in the studio to help us break down tonight's results. And we have crews spread out across the metro, keeping an eye on watch parties and ballot counting. But we don't want to waste any time getting to some preliminary results from one of Arkansas's biggest races. French Hill against Joyce Elliott, the Democratic challenger, and we have 82% of the precincts reporting Lance, and French Hill has maintained his lead he got about 2 hours ago.
That's right, yeah, 54% to Joyce Elliott's 46%. Joyce Elliott doing very well in Pulaski County, particularly the Little Rock metro area, as we all suspected. But French Hill capitalizing on his strengths in those outer counties of the district, those more rural counties of the district, and that's how they've done it in the second district in these last several cycles. Those Republican incumbents have been able to hold the district based on those outer counties.
Our Rolly Hoyt joins us live from the Arkansas Republican Watch Party.
Craig and Lance, they not ready to declare victory here at the Embassy Suites, where the GOP has been celebrating several other victories tonight. Senator Tom Cotton, President Trump winning big in this state, but they have been eagerly watching this race and keeping a close eye as the returns have come in, not just from Pulaski County, but from those outlying counties. The immediate sign that things were going to be close were when Pulaski County sent in their early votes, and they showed a 62 to around 30% swing between Joyce Elliott and French Hill. But then Saline County came in very closely after that, and it had 70% for French Hill. A similar number up in Conway and in Faulkner County, and now we've seen similar numbers come in from Perry, from Conway County. And we're still a couple of counties out there that should be in French Hill's strength, all indicating that he's headed towards a good night. But if Joyce Elliott overperforms in any of those other spots, these percentages are still so tight. That's why Melissa Zigowitz is outside of her headquarters as they eagerly await to see if she can turn this around.
Yeah, hey, really a much more quiet scene here in downtown Little Rock. Joyce Elliott is not yet here at the election headquarters because she is still trying to see what happens as those results come in. Now, with those latest polling numbers showing French Hill in the lead with 54% of the vote, I spoke with her campaign manager earlier, and he did offer me this statement. He says, "It's exciting to see democracy in action, but it's still too early to call this race, and we need to give it time." Also told the campaign knew this was going to be a late night, and it would take much longer to have this race called after those polls closed. Now, this is also not the first time Joyce Elliott has run for the 2nd Congressional District seat. She tried running back in 2010, 10 years ago, but lost with just 38% of the vote. Now, like I said, we are still waiting to hear from Joyce Elliott here downtown, and if we do hear from her, we will certainly bring that to you. For now, back to you guys in the studio.
And it was competitive for most of tonight, although only lately has French Hill started to edge out.
Now, I believe he's leading by about 8 points right now, which is a better margin than how he beat Clark Tucker in the previous election by 6 points. And so we've been looking for this to be a lot tighter, and it may still turn out to be that way. There's still a lot of vote out there, but it's interesting how it's fallen.
In the nature of politics, French Hill, who was a successful businessman in the city, was forced as a politician to go outside of the city, outside of Pulaski County, and go to surrounding counties, the more rural areas, to build that lead.
That's right. And he's not the only Republican who's had to do that. Tim Griffin had to do that as well. He didn't win Pulaski County, but he relied on those outer counties as well when he served in the 2nd District.
Well, that was one of the big stories. Another one is the voter turnout. Ashley Godwin has been following that from election headquarters. Ashley, to you.
Hey, Hey Craig, yeah, today was a special day today because we've seen a lot of high record beaten this year in Arkansas, but today it was all about the low turnout because of all of those high records that we've seen the past 2 weeks. So we haven't gotten official numbers yet, but we do know that we are expecting lower than turnout for this year. Another record that we did see is high absentee voting, and so this morning the absentee votes were actually starting to be counted. Pulaski County had a high-powered counting machine that counted 3,000 votes per hour. Also, canvassers were finishing up their ballots, making sure they were able to be counted, or if they weren't, they were put in another box. And that leads us to here, where I am right now, which is in the Commissioner's Building, and they are taking those ballots that were questionable. They are looking for any reason they can be counted, and if not, they're going to be tossed to the side. But I will send it over to Jordan now with more information on the election commission meeting.
Hey Ashley, yeah, so the election commission is still inside meeting, but we can tell you they told us earlier that 4,300 of those absentee ballots have been disqualified, and that could be due to several reasons, including lack of information such as a birth date or an address. And they are also going through another stack of absentee ballots, which they are calling problem ballots, and they plan to copy the voter selection onto another ballot that can be readable and then counted. And the reason for this could be all sorts of things, including maybe a torn ballot or marked incorrectly. So they're actually working right now going through that stack of ballots as well. And the commission told us earlier that they stand very firm on the duplication process to do this in public view, and that's exactly what they're doing inside right now, going through both stacks of these absentee ballots. Back to you.
All right, Jordan Howington and Ashley Godwin for us tonight. There are also three main issues on the ballot that we've been watching closely tonight, all three with major potential impact for the state. Issue 1 asks voters to approve making a temporary half-cent highway sales and use tax a permanent part of the state constitution. Right now, with 72% of the precincts reporting, 55% of you have voted for that. On to issue 2. It would change how term limits work in the state legislature, allowing lawmakers to stay in office for 24 years instead of 16. The results there again, 55% of you for that, with 73% of precincts reporting. Issue 3 would put stricter requirements in place for ballot issues. A majority vote for means signatures would have to be collected earlier in the year, and they would need signatures from 45 counties instead of just 15. 56% of you against that. So far, 73% of the vote counted. Our Mercedes McKay has been following these results tonight, and she joins us with reaction from both sides of these issues. Mercedes.
Hey Dawn, all these issues are so important for Arkansans, but the one that has gained a lot of attention leading up to today is issue number 1 with the highway sales and use tax. Earlier today, I spoke with supporters and opponents of this issue. Supporters told me they believe this is the only long-term solution for highway funding, while opponents say they don't think a sales tax should be put in our Constitution.
If issue 1 were to fail, Arkansans will be looking at a grim situation as far as our infrastructure is concerned.
We do think that government needs to live up to the promises that it's made to its people and find a better solution than what we're being presented with in issue 1.
June 2023 is when the sales tax is supposed to expire, and that's why opponents say the state has time to come up with a better plan. Now, Ryan Norris, who is the chair for Against Not Voting on issue 1, said in a statement, "We are proud of the effort that the coalition gave to educating Arkansans on the reasons to vote no on issue number 1. The group is already discussing potential legislative goals for the 2021 session." And then also Shannon Newton, with the chair Vote for Roads, Vote for Number on issue number 1, said if issue number 1 passes tonight, it will be a accumulation of so many efforts throughout the years. I'll send it back to you in the studio.
Our Verify team is always here to take your questions and concerns and get answers from the source. Tonight, even as the election results continue to roll in, it's so very important to remember votes are still being counted across the country. So let's verify. Can votes continue to be counted after Election Day? To find out, we checked in with Congressional Research Service records, past election records, and the National Conference of State Legislatures. Here's what we found out. No state reports its final results on election night. States can and do keep counting votes past Election Day, and they always have. Now, that may seem a little confusing when we see news outlets calling the winners, but those are technically projections based on the percentage of votes in on election night. We've also gotten plenty of questions about how absentee ballots are counted. And according to the Arkansas Board of Election Commissioners, state law requires all absentee ballots, which are sufficient and returned on time to the county clerk, to be counted regardless of how long it takes to complete the process. Meaning, election officials will keep counting all ballots, absentee and otherwise, until they're all counted for. Here's the deal, folks. We know that the questions will not stop just because voting has ended. So remember, you can always send us an email to verify@thv11.com, or you can always reach out to me directly on social media.
There'll be times when we may not always agree. There'll be times when I may take unpopular stands. But you will always know where I stand. And you will never have a fiercer advocate for Arkansas than I will be for you in the United States Senate.
Arkansas Senator Tom Cotton giving an acceptance speech earlier tonight, as early results show him easily overtaking his only opponent, Libertarian Ricky Dale Harrington Jr. And Lance, I think it's good to, as we look at those big results, that big margin, to once again rehash where was a Democrat in this race.
That's right. Well, there was a Democrat slated to be a candidate, but he dropped out the day that the filing period expired, so that when he left the race, another Democrat could not get into that race. And so there's still a lot of intrigue as to what happened there and why all of that happened. But the end result was Democrats did not field a candidate in the Senate race, and that left a Libertarian candidate, Ricky Dale Harrington, to take on Tom Cotton in that race and take him on by himself. And you see the result.
Former missionary to Scotland, former missionary to China, a Harding University graduate, Ricky Dale Harrington, beaten soundly. However, his first race, and you get the feeling that as a Libertarian, he may resurface somewhere in the future. Now, the AP called the race for Senate for the Congress for French Hill. Let's go live to his watch party now.
No member of Congress is successful without an outstanding staff, and very grateful to Brooke Bennett, my chief of staff. And then that group of people that get you moving when you have to be moving in a campaign. I could not do this without the love and support of Missy Rickles, Kathy Lanier, my campaign chair this session, Trent Minner, Amber Crawford, my political director, and then the brilliant polling of John Gilmore, and great publicity and communications advice from J.R. Davis. Thank all of those members of our team. But again, in all 7 counties and every week around our campaign headquarters, month in and month out, it's the volunteers that get the job done, that send the text, that send the mail, that send the emails, that help raise the money, that put on the events, that ask their neighbors to support. So my hat's off to those major workers, those sign putter-uppers, those volunteers in this campaign. Thank you very much. I'm blessed with colleagues that represent Arkansas, both in the Senate and in the House, and I extend my congratulations to Senator Cotton on representing Arkansas in the Senate. And I want to thank John Bozeman and Tom Cotton and Bruce Westerman and Rick Crawford very, very much. My friend, great friend from Wyoming, Congresswoman Liz Cheney, my friend Steve Womack, all the members who rallied around this campaign, loaned staff, loaned volunteers from their own families to come and help prove once again that it's good to have a hill on Capitol Hill.
French Hill with a 10-point lead now. AP declares him the winner over Joyce Elliott. Well, we quite frankly, go ahead and confess, we thought it'd be a little bit closer.
We thought it would be a little bit closer. We thought it would be at least closer than the 6-point margin that French Hill enjoyed over Clark Tucker in his previous election. But it turned out to be a little bit more pronounced of a victory for French Hill. And so there you have it, 55-45 with 83% of precincts reported. Still a little more vote out there, so we'll see if those numbers move a little bit more. But French Hill comfortable declaring victory tonight.
Proof again how deeply red this state is. That leads us to the presidential race. Donald Trump, a big walkaway winner over Joe Biden in Arkansas, 62-35. He will take our 6 electoral votes with him in the overall general election. No surprise there, Lance.
No surprise there. Actually improving on his about 60% victory in 2016. So doing a little better.
He was declared the winner within 4 minutes, and Lance and I, after the polls closed, Lance and I tend to think that may be some kind of Guinness record. Somebody needs to check on that, but there was no surprise here. And if you just count yard signs, especially in rural Arkansas, Donald Trump, understandably, the huge winner tonight over Joe Biden.
That's right.
The first candidate, remember, to reach 270 electoral votes wins the election, but with mail-in voting reaching unprecedented numbers in 2020, not clear when it will be known who the winner is. Natalie Brand files a report from D.C. and Delaware.
As President Trump monitors election results from the White House, CBS News projects he has won the state of Indiana and its 11 electoral votes. CBS News also projects victory for the president in states where he was expected to do well, including Oklahoma, Kentucky, and Tennessee. Earlier, the president talked about his chances of winning as he visited campaign headquarters in Virginia.
I think we're going to have a great night, but it's politics and it's elections, and you never know. Winning is easy. Losing is never easy. Not for me, it's not.
President Trump looked for big turnout from his supporters at the polls today.
I like the course we've been on. Keep our taxes low. I don't believe in socialism or communism.
Early exit polling revealed supporters of President Trump are more concerned about the economy, even over COVID.
The president is hosting invited guests at the White House for his election night party. Among those here tonight are cabinet officials. I'm Natalie Brandt in Washington.
I'm Michael George at the Biden campaign headquarters in Wilmington, Delaware. Senior Biden officials say they're confident he's going to win, even if it takes a while. CBS News projects Joe Biden has won a number of states, including New York, Massachusetts, and his home state of Delaware.
We're going to rebuild the middle class.
The Democratic presidential nominee capped his election day in Delaware.
I'm superstitious about predicting what an outcome is going to be, but I'm hopeful.
A CBS News exit poll finds a majority of voters think the U.S. efforts to control the coronavirus are going badly, which may help Biden.
There's no justification for all the negligence that has gone on for the last 4 years.
Biden is hoping to capture a large share of first-time voters.
I voted for Joe Biden because I felt that his policies best aligned with my views.
Michael George, CBS News, Wilmington, Delaware.
And if you want to take a look at any of tonight's results, our THV Live blog, THV11 Live blog is online right now on THV11.com, or you can text VOTE to 501-376-1111 and we'll send it straight to your phone. Keep it here. We're going to be right back. happening. Lance Turner of Arkansas Business, thank you as always. Several of these local races now have runoff elections involved. Go to THV11.com to find out about those, or watch Wake Up Central tomorrow. And thanks for watching THV11.